I'll point to you and we'll get.
Let's go.
I'm pushing the button.
Go for it.
We're live.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the March 9th, 2021 work session of the Tipp City Board of Education, and we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dave, we're ready for attendance.
President Dunaway,
Here.
Vice President Zakor,
Here.
Mrs. Heatherly,
Here.
Mrs. Dahl,
Here.
Mr. Patrick.
Here.
All present and accounted for, Madam President. The
Great.
quorum is here.
Great. So I'm looking for a motion and a second for the approval of the agenda.
A motion.
Second?
I'll second.
Motion and second by Mrs. Zakor and Mrs. Dahl. Oh, is that it?
If
Okay.
anybody has anything.
No, okay, so number 2, new business.
Well, we'll set the vote on it.
Well, that's what I thought. And you're
There's
like,
no
okay.
discussion.
I was like,
All right, we'll take a vote.
I said, are we not voting tonight?
Zakor,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
Motion carries. Dave, I'm so used to you going right into it that I thought, okay, we're doing something different tonight. Okay, number 2, new business, which would be A, resignation. Can I get a motion in a second?
I'll motion. I'll second.
Motion and seconded by Mrs. Heatherly and Mrs. Dahl. Is there any discussion? It's for the approval to accept the following resignation. Katie Sullivan, EMIS coordinator, effective March 30th, 2021.
April. Sorry.
Oh, I said March 30th, April 30th, 2021. Thank you for that.
I don't have anything to discuss about this. I saw your email though about feedback about the position and posting it. So I do have some comments about that. I don't know if that would fall under this or wait till after we vote for this.
I think it's now. Yeah, the discussion will be now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw in there that the EMIS coordinator is also the testing coordinator for the district. I guess I just have some questions about if, because the EMIS person doesn't necessarily have to have the same qualifications as like an educator. So do you think that's the best organization of duties?
Well, I think it lines up with student records and basically the testing coordinator is just from my experience, it is a processing person with the materials to make sure that we order and get registered for the correct tests. We get the access to the tests and things like that. So that's why I put the testing coordinator there. It's just to make sure all timelines are followed and things like that.
So does that person do that job currently? They do testing coordination?
We've been doing it for a long time.
It's not like a counselor at the high school that does that? Like a lot of districts, it's counselors that do testing coordination.
I think at each building, they could be building coordinators, but there's always been a district level person in the districts I've been in that has been the coordinator for the district. So
And it's been the EMIS person?
the EMIS person has been involved. And sometimes what they do is they say the EMIS person in association with an administrator at the central office. So they would work together to do that.
But our EMIS person is in charge of, it's our district testing coordinator, like they're the one talking back and forth to ODE and getting updates and then bringing back the updates for the people that are the building level coordinators.
Yes.
I think that's changed over the years. I know it wasn't like that when I first started here. So I'm not, you know what I mean? I don't know the process of how it morphed, but
Greg had been the district testing coordinator
was he?
for years.
Okay.
But he started out as a counselor, so that kind of, his position probably morphed. He was probably already the coordinator and morphed into EMIS.
He morphed that position.
So I'm just wondering if this isn't another time where we need to organize, because I think it's getting kind of messy as far as who does what job duty. Are people doing job duties because the person before them did it, or because it's the best way to organize for our schools and our children and our teaching and our staff? And I think anytime we have a resignation or an opportunity to reorganize, that it's a good opportunity to look at those positions and say, should this person have been doing this job? And do they need to continue doing this job? And for me, a testing coordinator is one like that I think is somebody that probably should be involved in education more than an EMIS coordinator, just because of my experience, an EMIS coordinator isn't normally somebody that's an educational, has a license, spent time in the classroom, has tested, so.
But EMIS people are, and nothing disrespectful to Dave either, but they're some of the number crunchers. And that's what, so they're in the data, the process to create the data, which is the testing process. And then they receive the data back, then it gets kicked out to curriculum, building principals, teachers, and things to analyze the data and decide what to do with it, what the next steps are after the data. I see the testing coordinator as the process person. Back in the day when everything was paper, the testing coordinator's job was, we said we sent you this many tests from ODE. Did you receive that many? Verify that, pass them out to the buildings, make sure that those testing coordinators did a double check of the test they received, bring it back, verify everything, contact air freight or whoever was coming to get them, and then all the boxes went out. And so that's why I see the EMIS with the data being a person that could keep that structured process in place.
I totally get that the paperwork side of it would be appropriate for somebody who is, for really anybody that is administrative to organize that. Again, I was just wondering if.
And it could be, as we look for the person, we could look at other scenarios for that position. It's not set in stone because it has been in different places over the years. So we can look at it again as we're taking in applicants and make a determination of whether it needs to stay there.
Okay.
So I think this is kind of like a what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of a situation, because about a year ago at this time, which is why we hired Battelle, because we had a bunch of different situations where the job changed and it was a good time to take a time out and say, hey, are we, to rethink that Corinne said. And that's why we hired Battelle. Now, sadly, that project never got finished. It kind of came right at the end of Dr. Complete, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then that's when COVID and all that stuff.
Sure.
But that was the original intention, of that project, to answer these types of questions, just in general. Do we need 3 people in a front office? Do we need 2?
Right.
We have 2, do we need 4? I mean, because it hadn't been looked at. There hadn't been like a position audit in a while.
Right.
And we were way behind on our job descriptions. Our job descriptions were extremely outdated to where maybe it was the 3rd person doing the job. And we were still in a job description from 3 people's, from 3 hires ago.
Right.
And this person gets it and goes, this isn't anything. I don't do any of this anymore.
Right.
So that's kind of what
Hats keep coming.
we keep coming back to the Battelle job,
the
Battelle project.
And with the testing coordinator piece, there was an office in this office that potentially had too many hats, and the person was very comfortable with that. and so when that person left, some of those hats, went to other places, and so we
As it should have.
Right, and we
As
can
it should have.
analyze whether or not all those landed in the best places.
Yeah, and then sometimes I also worry that when we don't take time to be intentional, there's never time to be intentional,
Right.
and so just always that caution and making sure that we can use these times to ask if any reorganization needs to take place, how to better support you and your team, and making those changes where necessary.
How many days is this posting up for the EMIS? Is it a 5-day, 10-day, 15-day posting?
So
I think
March 15th or that
That's-
Monday after?
Yeah, I think
Is that
this
Friday
one,
or that Monday?
yeah, this one may have been on a quicker timeline.
So that's,
Because we want to-
that's 5 business days. That's a pretty short time frame. 5 business days?
No, it was up it was posted last week.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it may
so
have
10
been
business
Posted
days.
Friday.
Thursday or Friday. Yeah, so yeah.
So that's 6 business days. March 5th was a Friday. This whole week, that's 5 days, plus Monday, that's 6 business days. Is that what we're saying?
Well, with that system online, you can go calendar days.
And did we do anything besides Dayton Consortium, or did we do just Dayton Consortium? Where did we post it?
I don't know about that one.
Dayton Consortium.
Do we put,
Okay,
yeah, one of the sites, but I think it was for Dave's position.
well, yeah, because we
It
have,
had a link to national, and so I could go there, but I don't think.
right, Ohio School Board Association, you know, VASA, all these other, Miami County ESC, you know, that type of things.
Right.
Since we're doing a short posting, the more we can get it out there, you know, the better. So,
I did, yeah, and actually I did see, I could probably go back to OASBO because I did see some EMIS coordinators on that, which is the business operations site. And I put Dave there, so now I know how to release the system and get in.
Yeah, and that one
it wasn't
place-
the easiest.
that one place charges only $250. I think it was Ohio School Board Association.
Yeah, it averages out because everybody.
I mean, that's pretty great, $250 for, I mean, it's like a pretty, you know, it casts a pretty wide net.
Yeah.
That seemed like a good value to me.
I like free.
Yeah, well, I know, but I mean,
How difficult is it to find EMIS coordinators?
EMIS is a specialty.
Specialized.
Yeah, it's pretty specialized, and it's one of those systems that's an intricate system to start with, and then it keeps getting revised. So, you know, if you get somebody that hasn't, you know, been up on the most recent trainings, they're behind, because things keep, you know, going forward in the age of continuous improvement. And so the site keeps changing a little bit every year.
But it's also a very critical system, right? Because it pretty much defines on paper what our district is.
Right, and it's also, it's not just a data point, it's actually, you know, it's records, but it's also like a grants management portal as well. So other things go through there rather than just student data and student records.
So I guess where I'm gonna land on all this, are we competitive with what we're offering for the position, salary wise?
I'd have to check the salary schedule on that one. Do you know Steve offhand?
I do not know off the top of my head.
I'd have to see what other people are doing with that.
if we're not, they'll tell us. I mean, you know,
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah, the
they'll let
candidates
us
will.
know. They'll say, hey, I really want this job, but you're about 5,000 low or whatever.
Yeah,
And then,
but yeah, if they come in, especially if they come in and the salary they have currently is higher than the one we're offering, then they'll definitely let us.
right, but if they're coming in from a district twice their size, we're half this, I mean, there's all, you can't, I mean, there's so many,
Right.
there's so many parameters involved with all of this, it's, yeah.
I will say that Ms. Sullivan forwarded to me, there's a notice for a new EMIS coordinator training. So it's a year-long EMIS coordinator training / mentor program. I can't recall which group it's offered through, but it is pricey, but it's definitely something that she says is worth it for any person that's newer to EMIS. And it's about $10,000 for the year, but I would highly
Did she take
recommend
it?
She did not.
Okay.
She had years of experience as
Okay.
a EMIS coordinator, but she
But maybe
said,
she had a friend that took it and thought it was worthwhile, or.
well, she did want to take it to keep up to date with
Uh-huh.
things, plus
Yeah.
you get your mentorship program. But I believe the $10,000 price tag may have been looked down upon. But I would recommend that program for anybody that's a newer EMIS coordinator that the district hires.
Okay,
That's something just to look into.
okay.
That could definitely help, and is currently recommended by the current EMIS person. So.
Okay. Do we have any other discussion on the QA resignation of EMIS coordinator?
I'd just like to thank Katie for her service and wish her luck. She wasn't with us very long.
Like 2 years, I think, right? Or Dave, was it 2 or 3? 2?
Maybe
Okay,
just
yeah,
two.
2. It was about this time of year, I feel like she got hired even.
Yeah.
So, okay, Dave, I think we're ready for a vote.
Okay. Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes,
Patrick.
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
motion carries. Item 3A, discussion items on PLP discussion. So Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Verhoff, do you have, before we start on our end, do you have anything on the PLP?
What do you want?
Well, I mean, usually the superintendent and assistant superintendent bring us the information, right? Because we're not the ones that took the emails. The board was not involved in this decision. That was Dr. Kump and Mr. Verhoff, and then it was Mr. Verhoff and Mr. Stefanik.
Right.
The board was not in the loop on this. So
Right.
with all of the emails that we got last year, with all the emails that we've been receiving recently, this might be a good time for you to bring us all up to speed, soup to nuts, and then, or else we could sit here for an hour and a half and the board can ask questions. But maybe if you start with the foundation,
Yeah.
we won't have an hour and a half worth of questions.
We can do that. I didn't know if you wanted all the data behind PLP use.
Well, you've been reading the emails, so
Yeah.
we're just trying to address the
Right.
recent emails
Right.
and concerns,
Yeah.
which are valid
Right.
and need to be addressed. So I'll start by saying that.
The concerns that I have received, have been about the content of PLP and or the support coming from PLP. I have heard that our local based teachers, are what we call our points of contact, have been receptive to student needs and have been reaching out more than the company's teachers and mentors. We've heard that they haven't been reaching out as much as we would have liked for our students. There's still the concerns that feelings of isolation, feelings of lack of connectedness, with the district, with third-party companies that occurs. We try to keep the connection with our points of contact. And again, some of those folks are doing great jobs, in staying in contact with the students. And at some points, they've undertaken, and I'll let Mr. Verhoff chime in here, they've undertaken extra responsibilities because we heard some concerns about leveling of some assignments and alignment, to some of the standards in some assignments. So the points of contact have gone in and they've created learning activities that are more aligned to the standards and what's occurring in our schools. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Even to go just beyond that, they've offered opportunities like weekly Zoom sessions with the groups or the students that are in their grade levels. So they're grouped by grade level. We have one person for K through 5, one person for 6 through 12, and then an intervention specialist that serves all of the special education students. So there have been opportunities to do those Zooms. The K-5 group does a book club. So there have been attempts by our points of contact to develop and promote that sense of community, to give that social interaction, to go beyond just, an asynchronous learning platform.
Would you be able to update us, sorry to blindside you on this, with our current numbers and compare that to, I know it's fluctuated since the onset of the school year. Where are we now with the current semester?
So at any point during the school year, we've had a total of 376 students who have at some time been enrolled in the full-time online program. Currently, we have 193. We saw a large influx of students returning to in-person learning after semester.
Good.
Thank you.
Do you, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Was that, I don't know how deep you went into this, Mr. Verhoff, but were they returning back to Tipp schools?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And was there a reason why it went from 376 to 193? I mean, I'm sure there's many reasons. Maybe one is feeling safer or health, but.
That was the biggest reason, was seeing that there wasn't transmission of the virus going on in schools.
Okay.
Wanting to have that in-person learning experience and the experience of learning from our teachers and not having that online platform.
Okay, so on that, I'd just like to segue what you just said. I don't know a lot about the PLP, but I am listening to some parents who considered it or are doing it. And I think one of the things that comes up, if this is correct information, they don't really have classmates that are local. They don't really have classmates at all.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So they truly are in a bubble with an instrument to learn. So they're not, so I think especially in the younger grades, I just feel that Wow, that's a big part of, early adolescent development and I see that as a really big deficit. If there's a way to improve that, and ideally with Tipp kids, and I'm gonna go back to what I said previously, if this continues, if there's any way they can actually be at home and Zoom into classes here at Tipp, that way they're with Tipp teachers, Tipp students, and maybe feeling more connected to their community.
And that was a concern of ours this year as well. And that's why we offered those Zoom opportunities to meet as groups and check-ins. And even at the K3 level, up to K5, we've been doing science and social studies outside of the platform. Because we found that those classes did not align with the Ohio standards, did not work for our families and our students. So Ms. Greskow and Ms. Rudnicki have been doing live science lessons, tape science lessons, having that interaction. We've been using
So how
studies
many
weekly as
times a
well.
week or a month would that be occurring for that Tipp PLP?
They do those weekly.
Weekly,
Yeah.
okay.
There's weekly check-ins, there's weekly lessons, weekly book club sessions.
Yeah, that's better than nothing. I mean, they're getting some of that dynamic with.
And Mrs. Wickline at the 6 through 12 level also does grade level meetings weekly.
Corinne, you had a question. Do you want to jump in before you forget it? Before you mind?
Yeah, I was just listening. It does sound like you guys are trying to make the best out of what was a poor platform to begin with. And I think that all of the information now that we have, I mean, you had to make a choice, right? We had to make a choice. Is there like an admin point for these? I love what you've done with the K5. They have a person. 6 through 12, they have a person. The book clubs, that's awesome. That the fact that you filled the gap with science and social studies, amazing. Is there like an admin that? What I'm thinking is one thing that I know some districts have done is they've had like a chat, so parents can get on as a group that's kind of run by the schools. An admin would run it. Okay, parents, what's going on? How do you feel? What's working? What's not? Because sometimes we do get those feelings of isolation. We end up with emails of frustration because the perception is that they're not being heard, right? And we know that we don't want anybody feeling left out of the conversation. And sometimes it's something as simple as making that intentional time to say, come and just complain to us and we're going to listen and maybe we can figure something out. I think too, it gives you a chance to say, hey, did you guys know that science and social studies is being offered online? Maybe you lost that email. Maybe it went to your spam. I know for some reason, some of my Tipp stuff, like the survey that you sent out, that went to my spam. I have no idea why. It's never has before. It just, emails get funky and they
We'd figure you would tell us anyways what you thought.
Yeah. What do you know you're going to hear from me? So I think that, right. So I think
I
that.
took you off the list, but no.
Right. So I think that, you guys were doing, it sounds like you're doing the best that we can to be online a school when we weren't created to be an online school. So maybe communicating that, and I don't want to be overly critical because you guys do a lot, and trying to run all your buildings plus an online school, that's complicated and it's a lot of moving parts.
Well,
Just another suggestion.
Well, and we actually started with that. We did three sessions, three different sessions. So, we may have had 9, base touches early on in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And what happened is each time we had another session, there were fewer people on the chat. So then the ones that wanted to share, some of the folks that were in the group chats, we ended up having individual meetings with those parents, individual Zoom meetings or Google meetings. And then the other ones, they were comfortable emailing us and calling us. And so whether we had the Zoom meetings or not, we were still communicating with them on a pretty regular basis. And so we started that, and now they have a separate PLP survey. What we did is we actually tailored it to an online learning platform. So it talks about, do you like the online learning or the idea of online learning? And then there are questions about PLP specific, online. And so when we get that back, in addition to the folks that are comfortable sharing the emails with either the board or us, will get hopefully, you know, a large percentage of the 190 students that are still using it and what they think about it.
Well, so Corinne stole my question. I should have let her go first. But I was going to say, you know, just reaching out to these parents, like one of the emails we got, she said, it would be so helpful just to have a classroom list of, you know, here are the 20 people in Tipp City that are also doing PLP in the 4th grade. Because yeah, as a parent, just like a kid's going to a group chat, hey, does anybody have the biology study sheet or whatever? They don't, you know, the isolation is the big concern.
The directory.
Right.
For those that can.
Just little things like that.
Directory information.
I know you just recently did the survey, so hopefully any little suggestion that we get like that, these are the people that have been doing this with their children. So they're the boots on the ground. They have the information that we don't have. And we just need to put all that together and, you know, make it work for everybody.
Right, and what we're doing.
And you know, I want the owls. I wanted the kids to just zoom in.
Right.
I love that idea.
And we have, again, we have that occurring, but what we're hearing from the teachers right now, and we had a meeting with Troy, because Troy is using Troy teachers for their online platform. And what they said was that they've got teachers designated as online teachers. So there would be an online group, you know, with the teachers. So they would, well, they'd be like this.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, and so there'd be an online session, so they would be able to interact with other students, they'd be able to interact with the teacher, you know, and do that. But then they have, you know, the teachers that are the in-person teachers. And they said with their secondary folks, they actually do it by bell. So first bell, second bell, and this teacher might be teaching English live and in person at high school, but then third bell, they're doing an online session with the students that, you know, want the online platform. And so they've merged it at the secondary level, but since the elementary students don't move as much, they went in person or online teaching. And so you can get those group situations occurring.
So how did they get their teachers to be able to do their online or Troy teachers with Troy students? Where did these teachers come from?
Well, they, we didn't ask exactly how they matched it up to the numbers, but what they had was they had a lot more people sign up for online than we did. And so without reducing staff, they actually took some of the staff that they had and designated them to be online teachers. So 2 years ago, before the virus, all those teachers were teaching in person in Troy. Now, some of them are doing online and some of them are doing in person.
Well, now that we only have 193, I mean, it was a lot harder with, you know, 376, but 193, I mean, divide that by 13 grades, right? It might be easier. You might just be 10 kids per grade band. So, you know what I mean? It might be more of an option now than it was last August because we didn't know if we were going to have 376 or 676.
Right.
And now that we've seen the numbers, you know, decreasing, it might be more of an option to look at, whereas it really wasn't last summer.
Sure. And one piece I'll put in there, and then if you want to add, because I know this is a conversation we just had, is for K-5, you can definitely do that. Say this number divided by class size and this. When you get to secondary,
I know, there's
you have to have an English certified person, a math certified person, and a science, so it's harder to put it together. And so hopefully we have some interested people that are dual certified, and then they can actually cover 2 of the content areas, you know, for the students, and then you don't have to have all of those extra secondary teachers, which then makes it very, I don't want to say cost prohibitive, but you know, possibly not as efficient, you know, resource wise as it would be in the elementary ages.
The other thing I would add is communicate early. I mean, you know, last year, but the biggest thing I heard was they didn't tell us until the last minute. And then we had that big PLP meeting where the people, whoever that group was, could not answer any questions.
Yes.
They were late to the meeting.
Right.
I mean, it was a disorganized, hot mess.
Right.
I found it to be extremely embarrassing, and that just can't happen again.
No.
Okay.
This is a thing where we're doing the survey now.
Right.
And so, you got the survey going out in March, and now we're gonna, analyze the data. And so shortly after spring break, we'll start seeing what it says.
Perfect.
And then we'll go out there looking at different vendors and different products and see what we can offer.
Mhm.
And then we put the offering out there and have people signing up before the school year's over.
Yeah.
And so then you've got the format set up, you've got your potential head count that you have to address in August, and then we move forward from there.
So I guess that's my question is, what do we as a group do to evaluate if we're going to need it?
Yeah, that's.
If
what I want to
everyone's,
know.
has access to the vaccine and the preferred method is in-person learning, if there are exceptions to that, I don't know if it's our responsibility to go beyond, there are other online platforms out there, some may be better, and I think, there's some responsibility for the consumer
Right.
to do the research about what is the best match. But I'm wondering, what is being the discussion in the state of Ohio as far as us having to contract again to offer a platform?
But from my perspective, I think that there's a lack of information that we need. I think I'd want to have an understanding of how many families anticipate wanting an online platform available to them if their child or certain vaccines aren't provided. So we have kind of a sense of what our student body is.
Right.
Then I think to me, the information I would need after that, I think it'd be helpful to the board is based on those numbers, what does this administration think it can do relate to online if it's required? My preference would be not to pay for a PLP and have our teachers teaching online classes. If it's feasible, I'm not here to Monday morning quarterback what's occurred in the past because that was an impossible situation. But going forward now, we've got, if we understand the numbers and we understand what we're able to do, having, some information related to here's what we could do with our teachers, or here's where we would need to supplement, or things like different options for us to all consider. And then I think it'd be helpful to have that information, hopefully by May, so then we can let the families know what we're going to do or what we're anticipating doing in different scenarios, like depending on vaccines or whatever else. That way families can plan ahead of time. And I think that based on that information, then I think we can then evaluate as a board what to do next related to online learning. I think you guys did a great job with what we had, and I'm not criticizing, but I think going forward, that's the information at least I think would be helpful for me to evaluate this further.
Well, isn't that the information you're gathering through the?
Yeah, we just
survey?
started to
I mean, it's-
gather it, but to answer Ms. Heatherly's question too, that question is what every district has to decide. We have a process, and I believe we even have a board policy called educational options. And the decision would be, possibly regardless of number, does this become an educational option that the Tipp City Schools offers from here going forward? This is one of those things that a lot of superintendents believe that now that it has begun, that some people have really attached to this way of learning. Their students have been successful. And again, not necessarily in every school district because people try different formats to get it done, but people have found success at different levels and comfort. And so there's a belief that this is one of those things post-pandemic that might be on the menu of educational options for more districts than it was before. So this board, after we provide the types of information that, Mr. Patry outlined and we've been describing, that we have to decide if this becomes an addition to our educational options menu, and then those students stay in the Tipp City Schools and they stay, operating in one of our programs, or if we get to a point where we say that the number's too small to put this many resources towards it, and that comment's not meant to diminish any individual student, but sometimes it gets to, if you're below a class size, is it still an offering? And so those are the types of discussions we have this spring so that we have it finalized before the end of this school year. And then people know how to plan going into the summer.
I think Corinne asked the question, but I think you asked the question looking for a different answer. You asked, is there an admin point of contact with PLP? And has that been used, Steve? And then to refresh my memory, I thought PLP was something that was sort of vetted by the ESC, and that was the option that was presented, and we chose to pursue that option. So since then, I suspect there's probably been some sort of conversations about using this platform. Is there an exchange of information happening with the ESC about using this company and contracting with them? You gave an example of our local teachers are having to supplement social studies and science because it's not aligning. We can't be the only district seeing that. So can you give us an update?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of the districts who were part of the consortium this school year are pulling out of that for next year.
Pulling out of PLP?
Mm-hmm.
And to follow up further on that question, Mr. Verhoff is almost in constant contact with Montgomery County ESC. Anytime we get a concern that we think needs to be shared out and that they need to, troubleshoot with the third party provider, he's in contact with them and they're making the changes, across all the districts that are using the PLP platform.
So this was based out of Montgomery, not Miami?
Yeah.
That's my second question too. I was under the impression it was Miami.
Well, Miami tagged on, but.
Yeah, it was a collaborative
yeah,
effort. Yeah, it was a collaborative effort.
I think
So
Montgomery
this
is
whole
bigger.
region is using PLP.
Yeah, Montgomery's a lot bigger. Their ESC is bigger.
Yeah, I think there were 30 some school districts that signed on to PLP in this area.
Yeah.
And it was those two ESCs working together, to see what was out there.
So who's going to be going over the PLP survey results? Do you have like a whole team for that? And then are you going to give the board a summation and a Friday board update? Just because it's going to be a lot of information?
Well, it'll at least be a Friday board update.
Okay,
If not
yeah, it's
work
going to be a
session.
lot of information, yeah.
Can I clarify that statement?
Sure.
The survey is not just going to people who are using PLP. They're using an online platform. Is it limited just to PLP, or are you surveying families who are using other platforms?
Like Virtual Academy?
Yes.
No,
Should we?
and that's something that folks may not understand. If you chose PLP, you're still listed as a Tipp City student.
Because we buy the license.
If you choose the Ohio Virtual Academy or
On your own.
Connections Academy or back in the day Econ,
Yes.
any of those,
They're not-
you have to withdraw from the Tipp City schools and you become, a student of those schools, if you will. I believe we have that database. Is it?
We should be able to pull it.
Yeah.
We should be able to pull that from.
Yeah,
I'm just putting the question out there. I'm
but no,
telling you
that's
to do
no,
it that
because
way.
we've had some emails to that extent, along the lines of, we went to one of the state online platforms. We want to come back. What's that going to look like? Is there going to be something different besides PLP as an option for our families? And so that's a good idea to send a survey out to anybody that did any type of online learning, even if they're not listed as a Tipp City student at the present time.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Verhoff. Has there been any, I know you're gathering all this data, but have you had any sort of smack panel discussions with PLP parents? One, in a group or through a chat or whatever, so to talk specifically about their positives, strengths, weaknesses, frustrations, et cetera?
Not since the beginning of the year, if it hasn't been a one-on-one conversation. I've
Or
had
a
one-on-one
group
conversations, but
that's-
not a small focus group or
Okay.
things like that, no.
Okay. Secondly, I know this is loaded, but based on your crystal ball, and you pay very close attention to Columbus and all, what do you feel the need is going to be for a remote venue in the fall, this fall?
You want my personal opinion?
Yeah, sure.
So over the past couple of school years prior to COVID,
Mhm.
we had approximately 40 students that would enroll out into those online charters like K-12 or ECOT or something along those lines. I see that number dropping from 193 closer to that 40. I think even if we had half of those students, half that number who chose to go online next fall, we're looking at 60, maybe 80 kids total that I think will be full-time online
I agree.
if there's no masks, if school looks more normal, and we're certainly trending in that direction. When they're saying that every adult will have access to a vaccine by mid-May or late May,
Mhm.
that's looking more and more like a return to normalcy. So I think we're going to see this number drop dramatically. And so then, to Mr. Stefanik's point, then we've got to do a cost analysis here and look at what our options are. I don't want to turn away any kid. That's why we did this year as an emergency to try and keep kids connected to our district. But at some point, you've got to look at it. We aren't in the business of online school. We're a brick and mortar traditional school.
Okay.
With that being said, I've had experience with districts who have maintained an online, offering well before the pandemic, decades before the pandemic. And the reason it was there, and it's something else to consider when we get to that decision point, is that with some homeschooled families, with some online families, there's some back and forth, there's some transition going on during the school year. And so if the school district has an online offering and they have staff monitoring the students in those programs, if they make that decision to come back at the end of the first quarter, at the end of the first semester or whatever, you maintain that connection, with the student and the
Right.
family. So when they come back into the school district, hopefully the
Transitions.
transition is easier.
Yeah.
Right.
So if they go off to Ohio Virtual Academy or Connections Academy or K-12, we don't have any supervision of what that child's doing in that format. So then if they come back, then we have to do the assessment, what were your experiences, what has your learning been, and then create the educational program. But they come back in like a new student moving in from, another school, another
Right.
traditional school district. So if you run your own program, you've got a little bit of maintenance of the learning relationship. And if they choose to transition back, then that should help some.
So we can look for a Friday board update, just type summation of the survey. And then at the May work session, we can have just kind of a catch up on this. And who knows, because now that they're allowing homecoming now and possibly prom, right? We received those emails.
Yeah, I
So, that's a few months away. We might have more information on what this is going to look like in August. And so, let's just hope that we have even some more better information by the May timeframe.
That's what we're looking for.
Is there anything else on PLP?
Well, I want
Oh, go
to
ahead.
recognize the teachers. We have 3 educators who are in that role of facilitating that transition and that liaison. And I heard you say you're meeting with them and get feedback from them routinely.
I meet with them weekly.
I thank them for those roles. I mean,
Absolutely. How are they
it's
doing?
been on a dime.
Yeah, how are they doing that? Where are they coming up with their time to be able to do that?
That's their assignment?
That's their assign, that's
they
their
got assigned
position for the
that
year.
in the fall.
We assign them
Okay,
to those positions for the year
Right.
for a number of reasons.
yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Mr. Verhoff. I know it's been a lot of layering and a lot of new layers coming in that you have to detangle and,
Another one of those hats that Mr. Stefanik was referring to earlier.
yeah.
They just keep coming.
Thank you very much.
Well, just like last year at this time, there was a lot of change happening rapidly, and it feels like now we're on the other end of that. Things are changing rapidly as we have greater access to the vaccine.
It's almost a year.
Well, last year, a year ago, this was March 9th. It all happened on Friday, March 13th.
Right.
Wasn't that weird? It was Friday the 13th when we all found out. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Anything else on PLP? Okay, so we'll put that down for the May work session, or, yeah, probably work session. So 3B, open enrollment discussion. So do we want to start, where do we want to start? Mr. Stefanik or I guess this would be more Mr. Stefanik. This is what we looked at last year. I mean, this is the paper we all had last year.
It's, yeah.
With one more column.
Yes, with one more column on it. What you have is you just have a grade level enrollment piece there. And at the bottom is a breakdown of the open enrollment by grade level by year. And so that just shows changes or stable numbers year to year. And I believe it starts in 2011 and goes right up to the current year. In the attached document, which is a lot smaller than the massive placemat size document, that is a projection into next year, except for the kindergarten numbers. And at the elementary grades, we actually go in and do an average class size. So you can see the breakdown. Again, the full grade level enrollment divided by the number of teachers that we currently have allocated to that grade level gives you your average class size.
But 6 through 12 grades, we don't have a,
Harder to do
yes.
because things are set up by departments and teachers aren't necessarily 9th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade teachers. They're by department, so it's harder to do that.
So then how does one determine when your classes are maxing out or have maxed out?
What we've done in the past is as you set up your schedules, you can, at that point, then you can go in and per department, you can determine what your average class sizes are going to be when you get your class layouts there. Mr. Viroff, have you done anything different here with secondary, trying to determine how many teachers you need in each department?
No, we would, just as Mr. Stefanik said, we'll look at number of teachers, number of sections available, class sizes, things like that, to determine how many teachers are needed at those particular grade levels and what the class sizes should be.
So I want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Is it this estimated 2021 actual or 2021 estimated? Which,
Where do you see an estimated?
Yeah,
I only see actual. Am I looking at something different?
Yeah, if you work your way,
Oh, there you go. I see.
if you work your way from left to right,
I see it now.
the estimated really isn't all that applicable until you get to 21, 22, because now we're estimating in the next year. All the other ones, I would say go with the actual, because that's actually what showed up in the current year and last year.
You think we're going to have a decrease in 21, 22 with all the new housing developments? That seems crazy.
Well, what you don't have there, you don't have the kindergarten numbers in there. So if you're talking about, are you talking about per grade level?
Well, yeah, you just said look at 21, 22 estimate, and I'm looking at that, and
Right. What you typically do is you just draw a diagonal line and take the number you have in the one grade and roll it up a grade.
right.
That's your estimate. And so some people try to sit there and go like, we're going to do a 2% increase per grade, but a lot of times you just take what you have currently and you roll it up. Then you're going to have building, going on, going into next year. That because there are housing developments and the construction companies are out there. But it's all based on how many students are in the families that buy those houses. And so you have to, you can't really put it in one particular grade level. You just have to wait to see what arrives.
Couple questions on the enrollment update chart. And I can't speak for the other years, but on 2020, the open enrollment number is listed as 83. If my information is correct, of that 83, only 29 students of that number were actually non-teacher staff students that were open enrolled. Then the remaining 54 were teacher students based on the superintendent agreement. And of that 54, 40 of those teacher students we had open enrollment credit for because they were a contiguous school district, and 14 of them were not considered for open enrollment credit because they were non-contiguous and they were attending not under open enrollment, but under the superintendent's agreement. Is that correct?
There, yeah, my understanding that Tipp City's open enrollment agreement in the past was that it was open enrollment to contiguous districts. So yes, if they were contiguous, they qualified under that. If they lived further away than that, then they would qualify for that.
So then I guess when we're defining open enrollment numbers, we're not really saying these numbers aren't open enrollment numbers, they're really out of district numbers, correct?
Yes.
They're really what? What did you say?
They're out of district students, yeah, not necessarily open enrolled, because we only had 29 open enrolled students for the 2019, 2020 school year, the 2020 fiscal year.
Right. So if you look back at this sheet here, the one that shows all of the enrollments back to 2011, and then there's a bottom section that says OEs included. That really should say outside students, not OEs, because we have our superintendent agreement kids are in those numbers, and,
Right.
and our open enrolled kids and our teacher kids. So there's 83 students that live outside of Tipp City that attended last year
Right.
at Tipp. And then depending on where they lived, determined how we coded them.
And for 2020 fiscal year, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, Mr. Stevens, is that 54 of that 83 were based on the superintendent's agreement for staff, teacher, kids. And then only 29 of those were truly contiguous school district students unrelated to teachers or staff that were open enrolled.
Correct. They lived in a contiguous district and were eligible to attend Tipp City schools as an open enrolled contiguous student.
Okay.
So this current school year, I know a lot of teachers moved here over the summer. So you're saying right now, today in Tipp City schools, there's 29 staff kids?
No.
That was last year's number?
That was last year's number.
So that's where I'm confused.
Okay, if I may say something. That summary of those numbers is my understanding as well. However, I feel we have failed to communicate what those numbers mean in dollars and cents. Because I feel we have improperly communicated misinformation to this public that if you look at 2020, on that enrollment sheet at the bottom, 83, it was communicated to this public that you take that number times $6,020, and that's what we get for open enrollment.
That's what we said.
Well, let's go through the numbers. So in 20,
I'm sorry, but I'm not.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done. I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
I didn't know, I
Mr. Penn.
didn't realize it was a dramatic pause. I apologize.
Well, it's not my dramatic pause. When you get in your 60s and your brain activity slows down a little bit, you may have a greater appreciation for what we do. And I'm okay with that. Okay, so because diversity, neurodiversity is a good thing. It teaches us to respect each other and our strengths and weaknesses. So the 83, what I'm saying is there was this perpetuated dialogue that you take that number times $6,020 and voila, that's what we get for open enrollment, which is not really the case. And so while I appreciate you disaggregating those numbers from true open enroll students, contiguous true open enroll students versus employee students, the conversation shouldn't just stop there when we have told this district that we're taking a simple incorrect math formula and saying $6,020 times 83, and therefore that's what we bring into the district.
Because there is no true cost, because students cost differently based on a lot of different factors.
Well, that's another layer, Joan.
Right.
What I'm saying, we perpetuated this base model that you take $6,020 times 83, let's assume all students were equal. And I know certainly what you're saying because it's formulated differently for different JVS, disabled, whatever. But all I'm saying is if you take that base model, you can't do that and say that number times 6,020.
Right, so last year, the big thing was in the community that this school board gave up, and they were rounding up, it's $499,660. But there were people in the community saying that this school board, you know, was not a good financial steward of the taxpayer money and gave up $500,000. And what Ann is saying is correct. You cannot just take 83 and multiply it by 6,020. That's not, the math is much more complicated than that.
It is, and I can give it to everybody. And I think that what was communicated by me, and I'm guessing that that's what we're referring to as far as misinformation, was that roughly we were giving away $400,000, which was in the explanation I provided was that I was making rounded for easy math. But here's how it worked, is that we had 83 students out of district. Of those, we had 14 non-contiguous students that were here based on a superintendent's agreement. Of those students, we would get $2,439 per student. In 2019-2020, we got locked in because of the budget they did to the 2018-2019 number. And so we only recognized for that specific category 13 of 14. So that threw our numbers off a little bit. On the remaining 40 of the 54 teacher students that are part of the superintendent's agreement, those 40 lived in a contiguous school district. So for those, we were able to get open enrollment credit. Still locked into 2018-2019 numbers though. So, but roughly, if we got full credit that was for 40, it's $241,800 for those students. Without open enrollment, we got $0 for those. On the 29 true open enrolled, unrelated to the teachers, we had $6,020 for each of those students, and the total that we received was $174,580.
How much was that?
$174,580
For which student?
for the 29 open enrolled, if we had the full credit.
That are not
children of students that are a contiguous school district that were open enrolled. The reality was, if we had all of what we were supposed to get, we would have had roughly $416,380. But that number gets adjusted down a little bit because some students that are open enrolled are at JVS or not full time. And so what we actually received, if would have our 2018-2019, which we received in 2019, or which we did receive in 2020 rather,
yeah,
was $401,000 or $401,170. So when we got rid of open enrollment, what we lost is we lost not only the $174,580 of the 29 students that left, but we also lost the 6,000 of the 40 students that were open enrolled credit. So the reality of that is that we lost $369,463. And so when I roughly estimated at 400,000, I was off about 31,000. But those are the exact numbers. And based on what I've just said, Mr. Stevens, is that accurate?
yes.
And so that is what getting rid of open enrollment cost this school district. It was a loss of $369,463. Part of the reasoning behind this that was advocated, the getting rid of open enrollment, was the CUP report, and that the CUP report reflects the cost of the student at roughly, and I'm using rough numbers on this one, is $10,000. The problem with that analysis is that $10,000 is based on various expenses of the school district that are just divided by the number of pupils. And so in those expenses, you have administrative expenses, you have operating expenses, you have instructional expenses, you have support expenses and things of that nature. Removing those students did not reduce our teacher count. Did it, Mr. Stevens?
Say that again. I apologize.
Getting rid of the open enrolled students did not reduce our teacher count, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
And as a result of that, then we didn't lose any instructional costs other than maybe the cost of the textbook. We didn't reduce the cost of the operating the buildings, maybe other than water used when they flush the toilet or drink water at the water fountain. The cost to maintain the buildings, to administer the school district, all those stayed largely static. Even if you took out $655 per student, which I think it's roughly the cost of the support per student, per pupil for that year, that doesn't make up for $369,000. So the bottom line is getting rid of open enrollment did not reduce our costs. It did not save us money. The only thing it did, because we can't reduce expenses great enough to offset the $369,000, is that we just increased the per cost per pupil on the CUP report. Now, the problem with this is we're not going to be able to truly see the effect of this until after COVID and everything that's occurred, because it's so crazy at this point. But the reality is, this is fact, is that we lost $369,000 by getting rid of open enrollment. And we only lost 29 students. So we did not reduce class sizes at all. And so that's what I was advocating for last year. And that's what I was relaying. I used round numbers just to be quick and to let the concept sink in. I didn't do the math the way I've done it here, but that's the reality of what's occurred. My feeling on open enrollment is that if it's used appropriately, it's a good idea for the school district. And what do I mean by appropriately? Well, we have to have a policy in place that considers the average class size that we want, and then have a policy in place for open enrollment that provides us the ability to accept a certain number of students to get us to the average class size, so that when our classes sizes go up and down, we're able to maintain a steady level. The amount that we save and make on open enrollment is going to go up and down from year to year depending on our needs. So this $369,000 does not necessarily mean it's going to be the same going forward. So who knows where we're going to be in the future? My whole point is that we don't need to get rid of completely get rid of open enrollment. We just need to have a policy in place that limits the class sizes to the size that we want, that allows the school administration then to fill when we need it, so that we have stable class sizes. Example of where that would have been useful is if you look throughout the years, our class sizes are going up and down. And unfortunately, because of the way these numbers are aggregated, we don't really know what's open enrolled and what's out of district and what's related to teacher contracts, et cetera. And so I would urge that the board, based on what we've just discussed, consider having an open enrollment policy that's more geared to class sizes that we need and maintaining a level instruction of number of teachers that we need for those years that they do go up, and then allow the administration then to enact it when we need it.
Okay. That's a lengthy explanation. However, you said when you believe when open enrollment is used appropriately, and in order to move forward appropriately, I feel we need to look back just a little, because we owe it to the people that watch this to tell them what the real issues are. And you talk about 29, I thought it was 30, but if you say it's 29 students that are truly open enroll, I'll take that number, which leaves you with how many?
54 superintendent agreements.
54 superintendent agreements. Okay. Well, last year in 2020, when we got into this heated debate, we lumped all this together as each student getting $6,020. Now we know that's a false statement. We didn't even identify that we had 13 kids coming from non-contiguous districts until Mrs. Dahl and I went in and looked at the numbers very closely. That information was not given to this board. We went and got that information on our own. Now, when you say all these quick numbers, for example, the 54 superintendent agreement kids are not bringing in $6,020 per head. they're bringing in roughly $2,468. I took the time to get the formula for that calculation. If y'all want to get your pen out, you can get this from the ODE Finance Department. They look at our state share index, which is, I guess, kind of complicated based on our wealth factor, which is roughly 41%. It's 0.405. So you take 41% times the $6,020, and that will equal $2,468.20, which is what each one of our children get that live here in this district. $2,468. That's the resident foundation amount that they get for being in our district. I'll let you catch up with your numbers.
Well, let me just say is
Well, I'm
that,
not finished though, Mr. Patrick.
well, I just want to make a point of clarification to help further the discussion is that
Right
there's,
now, I
you
would
said
like,
54,
Madam President, could you please
you said
allow me
50,
to not be interrupted?
Simon, she let you talk without being interrupted, so let her, because it's easy to lose your train of thought.
fair enough.
So, and you were at
Thank you very
2,000, and you were at 2,468 times 54, which is 133,272. That's the resident amount, and then so
Yes.
continue from there.
But let me go further. And I'm not trying to drudge up old matters. I'm trying to move forward with an honest conversation for this community. So the children that were coming here with the teachers, employees, let's call them the employees' kids, were not bringing in that $6,020, and nor should they be billed as an open enrollment student, because they're not an open enrollment student. I'm not going to go past, say who did what and why, but that's what I was told by ODE.
Well, I trust ODE.
Those, it is,
The buck
you
stops
don't
there.
classify an open enrolled student as classified, you classify them as following the parent, and it's on the ODE website.
Okay.
Now, there's even more proof to that. When you look at the TCEA contract, it talks about them having their grade level of, I think, a C for these kids, which I'm like, that's not a criteria for open enrollment. So that is even further proof that these teachers' kids should not, I'm not going to say how they were classified. I'm not going to say who sent what into the state and what kind of money they got back. But I'm saying what the proper procedure should have been. And reporting the non-contiguous kids, we were also told another $6,020 per head. And again, it goes back to the 2468 amount. So when we move forward with this conversation, let's acknowledge a couple things, please, out of respect for the public. We started out in 2020 talking about open enrollment, bringing in $500,000. I remember that because I was new on this board and I listened to that. Didn't quite understand it, I didn't challenge it, but I listened to it. Then that number went from 500,000
To 400.
to 440,000, I believe it was. And then that number went down a little bit more. And when you do the calculation, as I believe it should have been done, the number is going to go down even more. So whatever you decide moving forward, or however this debate goes, that's fine with me. I'll listen and participate. But I'm not going to sit here and gloss over last year's conversations that got perpetuated with false information.
Simon, did you want to jump back in this before I talk? So if you
Yeah,
want to jump in
I
last.
appreciate it. So the first thing is that, Dave, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said the 54 students we don't get more than 2,600 or so. At the time, though, we were getting 2,439 because we were locked into 2018, 2019 fiscal year numbers. Is that right? Roughly? It wasn't 2,600.
Our total foundation money that the district received in fiscal year 20 was the same amount that we received in fiscal year 19, because that's the level they had us at.
Mhm.
Which was what? Oh, sorry. I thought-
2,439.
Yeah,
Well,
2468,
it did-
24, that much of a difference.
ABM doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
It
not.
said, this is what you got in 2019, this is what you get in 2020.
It was
And-
maxed out, yeah.
Until we got to May when they cut our budget because of COVID.
But of that, we had 54 students that were related to the teachers, but we had 40 of those that we got $6,000 in 2018-19 that we would have got if it was done the same way that had been done the years before for those 40 students, correct?
There were 40 students that lived contiguously around the district that EMIS qualified them as open enrolled
6,020.
students.
So a truly open enrolled student is 6,020.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay.
and in those, and EMIS, our EMIS person said that those would be at 6,020 per student, so that not 54, at least the way we're doing it. And whether Ms. Zakor is correct or not, I don't know the answer to that question, but the way our EMIS person had qualified it at the time is that 40 of those students, because they're contiguous, are qualifying for 6,020 versus the 2,400.
Correct.
Okay. So now, Ms. Zakor, you make an interesting point, and if that's the case, I think we need to understand it as we go forward on open enrollment.
Thank you.
But that discussion was not misinformation or anything else. It's just based on what we were provided and what my understanding of what was indicated. I don't think there's anything that was misinformed or mischaracterized. I think we're pretty much close to the numbers that we were, just that we have more information as to discounts that were provided and everything else. Now, let's just say that your numbers are correct, that we only get 2,400 or 2,600 for those 54 students versus the 6,000 that we got for the 40.
Okay.
We're still going to be down 136,800 on that, because if you subtract the 6,020 minus the 2,400 or 2,600, it's roughly $136,800 difference that we would have received more than we should have if what you're indicating is correct and our EMIS person was
What
wrong.
I'm concerned about.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then it is what it is, I guess. But net result, though, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, we go from 369,463 less 136,800, and we're still in the hole 232,663 that we would have had with those funds.
No, you're in the hole based on a misunderstanding of what those children bring in. And I'm not here to make allegations towards anybody in this district. I am simply saying that just because we brought that money in doesn't mean it was done procedurally proper.
Well, I guess I'm basing it on what our administration has qualified these students to be and what we were receiving funds. And so if there's something different than that, then I think that's something that needs to be delved into. But the reality is that had this board not acted to eliminate open enrollment, we would have been positive a certain extent, either 369,000 more or 136,000 or 232,000 rather, or some shape, form, manner, we would have had more money coming in. And so even with your statement. So I still think that open enrollment has a place in the school district if it's applied appropriately. I think if there was an issue with the way we were applying or qualifying students and how that was being calculated, the solution is not eliminating open enrollment, it's evaluating how we're calculating these things
Moving forward.
and moving forward. But I still think that that's something that we should be considering. So even if that's an issue, my recommendation would be is that we have an open enrollment policy that allows us or the administration to do those types of evaluations to see what our class sizes is, so that if they do see a financial benefit to adding kids without increasing the target class sizes that we have, that they can do it. And if they say, oh, actually, there's no difference financially, they can eliminate. I don't see how that's even possible, but let's just say they do that. Then they could do that. Or, hey, we're going to get, our class sizes are going to be too big. Well, then they can decide that's the case, because or our policy will dictate that that's the case. But I don't think that the solution is eliminating open enrollment.
Okay, and I appreciate your thoughts, Mr. Patrick. I just want to say that when we keep back referencing these numbers, we've got to let go of that, because even though we got that money in and now we're having to pay it back because we ended open enrollment. That needs to be clarified, that maybe that was, we shouldn't have had that money to begin with. The amount that we received, if this had been done procedurally right, and these children would have been classified correctly. That's what I want to say here.
Respectfully, that's still up to debate though.
And we
isn't it?
can't keep saying, well, we lost all this money. Well, we can't complain that we lost money that we probably shouldn't have had in the first place. I don't think we're doing ourselves any big service by keep revisiting that.
Wait, did I miss that last year when we talked about that? I mean, this is the first I've ever heard of us not having classified children appropriately and receive money that we shouldn't have.
Well, here's the thing. I did a lot of research on this, and frankly, I don't feel I should have to. I'm a board member. I come here, I should have been given this information.
Amen. That's
It's
very,
not my job, really, to be reaching out and spending hours on this, although I did it, because I like to feel like I know what I'm really doing, but it's not my job. My job is to come in and believe I'm getting credible, accurate, thorough, comprehensive information in which to base a decision on.
so, sorry, Creed, do you want to jump in before I?
And I just want to say that, I think trying to say that we lost or gained money from open enrollment is a rabbit hole, because how do you put a financial value on a student? We can argue which numbers go in which column, which do you debit, which do you credit, and then trying to create a value for just what a student brings with them to the classroom that we may now lose or we may now gain. If you take a class from 15 to 20, what does that do to interaction? What does that do to teacher inability to attend to student needs in that classroom? We've already heard that we have not lost any teachers due to open enrollment students leaving. So I think that other than really frustrating each other, trying to put a tag and amount onto a student is really a lose-lose for this board as far as focusing and moving forward. I also believe that when another, as we look around us in the districts around us, in Miami County has a lot of districts that do open enrollment to some degree or another. We look at counties to the south of us, Vandalia, Oakwood, Centerville, Kettering, Brookville, Beaver Creek. They are not open enrollment. And I would say that their students don't suffer and their district financially doesn't suffer. So again, I don't think that it's a financial cause. It is just, deciding what we as a district want to do. If we had a policy to at least consider, I think that that would be a starting point for me, because one of the stories that I took away from speaking with lots of people was the human cost of what our open enrollment did to alienate people and make them feel that they weren't valued because they didn't understand the process. They didn't understand why their student was, and if your student was accepted for open enrollment, of course you felt happy. If your student was not, you had no idea why they were not. And we had no idea how that process worked and what it looked like, and we couldn't speak to it either. So again, without a policy to at least consider, I don't feel like the numbers is enough. I just don't feel like there's any, discussion to even have on this.
Well, there is one other thing I want to add. Moving forward and agreeing that, and I'm glad we all agree that we really need to be on the same page with credible information. The other thing with the open enrollment, this is hindsight, but there's a lot of people that lashed out at us and didn't really, I don't want to go into that, but there's other layers. Our open enrollment form.
Oh, you stole mine. I was going to bring that up.
It's totally improper. And Mr. Patry, you even agreed at one meeting, that according to the law, the revised code, what you can ask, we shouldn't have these are previous open enrollment forms. There should have there should not have been on there, do you play sports? And if so, what sport? There shouldn't have been on there, how many times have you been suspended? That's irrelevant to open enrollment. What's relevant is if you've been suspended 10 days or more. Okay, the sports, no. If you've been suspended twice, 3 times, our open enrollment form to me started looking like a recruitment form. Looking for, I'm not gonna say this because I can't remember if the grades were on there, but it started looking like a recruitment form. Are you a behavior problem? If you have it, please
I
pull
think I
it
have a
up.
copy of it.
You know, so we'll see, suspended once, 3 times, 5 times, I don't know. Again, irrelevant according to the law.
There were some inappropriate questions on there that.
Do you
had no
play
business.
sports? And if so, what sport? Irrelevant. If we're gonna be looking at truly open enrollment, we can't be saying, oh, we got a soccer player over here. Oh, we got a basketball player. Oh, we got a good high achieving student here. How does that serve the kids that are really trying to get in here, maybe for their academic, truly want academic
I think
advancement?
that also speaks to, there's a lot of work right now in equity. And I think that our previous practice with open enrollment was so inequitable and so did not provide an even playing field for students or families seeking access. And again, without even a policy to work from, to say this is what we're going to do to be more equitable in the future. Like, and how do you create a policy to frame that work? That's a lot of work.
So are you finished? Because
Yeah.
okay, because I haven't spoken, but I was letting everybody else, everyone's trying to jump in and let the other person talk. So a couple of things. I think we all agree here, whether it was the, what was reported was the $500,000. That's just an easy round number that people want to grab onto. We were not good stewards of $500,000. Now tonight we've discovered the number is, quite possibly more around 232,000. 500,000 and 232,000 is a big difference. I mean, and that takes me back to my other point, which is, to Ann, for you to spend an hour and a half on the phone with ODE tomorrow. I mean, thank you for always coming to the meeting prepared, for always doing your research. I really, really appreciate that aspect of you. It goes hand in hand, with what you do for a living. That is most definitely your skill set. And when I first came onto this board, every year I would come in, I would forward all this information. I have all this research. I have all these articles. And quite frankly, it got tiresome. So I appreciate that. Don't lose that spunk and that, that fire, because here I am in my 6th year and it can kind of wear you down. So just know that that's appreciated, most definitely. And the other thing is, to Ann's point, the form that we had on open enrollment was inappropriate. I don't need to say anything else about that. Reaching out to several, professional people, whether it was ODE, Ohio School Board Association, they just couldn't even believe that we had that form. It's where in the heck, how does this even happen, right? Simon, to your point about class size, that was one of my big sticking points last year. And as a board member, I will never be okay with open enrollment until somebody can show me that we do not have grossly, inappropriately large math classes. I don't know what it is about the math classes. I think it's because I have, even today, a parent reached out to me about her student in their math class. We have wonderful teachers in Tipp City with math. That's not what I'm saying. My point is, I would think that any math teacher would say it's a lot harder to teach 32 kids algebra than it is 22. Mm-hmm. And, Simon, I love that you're saying, oh, we'll let the administrators, because that's great, right? Because as a board member, we're supposed to believe in our administrators. That's what we're here for, to support them. However, I have been in this district for 7 years. I've had kids now go through the middle school and the high school. And I'm going to say this, you're asking me to trust administrators to get math class sizes to a decent amount so we don't have 32 kids in math 1st period algebra and 8 kids in math 7th period algebra. And it still happens today. If I pulled up the math classes at the high school right now today, you would see that it's disproportionate. So I'll use it as a carrot. If the teachers here or the administrators here are, absolutely want open enrollment, then I will pose this. You go 2 years and show me all of the math classes for grades 6 through 12, and we don't have any classes over a certain amount, which any math teacher would consider teachable, then I will consider changing my mind on open enrollment. I have not changed my mind on open enrollment for 6 years. And like I said, until we get administrators that can figure out how to get the appropriate amount of kids into math classes, it would be very hard for me to change my mind. I feel that strongly about it. Also, with all of the new housing developments that are, popping up around Tipp City, we have kids moving into the district. So that's also going to help make up for the open enrollment loss. But I mean, it's a majority. So it's, however the board decides is how the board decides. I've just been very strong on my stance about open enrollment, and it's all, ironically, it's always been around math. Sorry, Joanne, do you want to speak?
Sure. So last year, we developed a policy that said we would vote on this annually.
Yep.
To reconsider open enrollment. And I don't know that the policy says it specifically, but last year we also agreed that we were not going to allow tuition. And I would move that we reconsider that, as we had this year, we used CARES money to pay for the PLP platform. We just heard that we may be considering that again. I don't think we're going to be having CARES money come in for that. I understand what you're saying, that there are other districts that do not offer open enrollment. I don't know if that also extends to tuition or not, but I hope that we would be making decisions based on what's best for our district. I hear your concerns about not having faith in numbers, but I don't think that we should hold the current administration at a standard based on what we did or did not trust from past administrations.
Well, I'm talking about this year.
Yeah, we're talking about this year. Right. So I like the idea of using like class size as an indicator, because it makes it pretty cut and dry of whether, you're going to permit a student to come in or not. We are having housing come into the district, but you'd have to, to me, it's a nebulous number because it's sort of skewed right now because of PLP. And not all the homes are, are sort of geared towards young families bringing students in. So we don't know that that's going to be a sharp increase or not. And I don't know how you would project that. That's why I was asking for some of these numbers. Every month, Dave has included in the treasurer report some indication of offset or loss associated with open enrollment or lack of tuition. And I feel like if we're looking for opportunities for families and talking about all families, being valued and us having a competitive school district, I think that that's an opportunity that we should extend to people as an option. Just like we're looking at options for online platforms and how to include those students, make them feel part of the district, it works the other way as well. Open enrollment and tuition is a tool so that we can operationally balance the resources that are being extended. So when you have a class of, 22 kids and you can go up to 24 kids, you're still going to pay the same heat bills. You're going to still pay the same teacher salary and benefits. So why not use that to offset? There are a lot of districts in our area that are using open enrollment to make up for some of those costs. I think Milton is one of them that they've taken in a lot of open enrollment students. And so I think we need to make the decision based on what we think is best for our district. And I don't want to get into the argument about the numbers. To me, it seems like it's a tool that we don't want to get rid of. You can work with the administration of how you want that tool to be exercised, but I hate to take the tool away when it's available to them. And if there's a way that, maybe we should have not spent so much time maybe developing this policy about whether we'll vote on open enrollment every March or not, maybe we should be looking at maybe a policy that talks about class size and how to limit it. I know that that's always been a value that we talk about related to this subject, and we talk about that as something that we're proud of in the district, of keeping class size measurable or, manageable. And I don't know that, I remember you talking about a math class issue from.
It's every year.
Is it every year though?
Yeah, it's even this year. And I appreciate what you're saying about, capping the class size, which is easy when we do K-5 because there's 8 pods.
Sure.
So you just, if you have 300 kids, you divide it by 8, that's how many staff, I mean, we don't, you know what I'm saying, for numbers sake. But once you get into the middle school and high school, you know that you've had kids
Much
here.
more difficult.
Well, you're changing classes. So with the middle school, I mean, you know me, I fight this fight every year. It's not just at this time of year, but I'll check in December when I have a parent reach, I'll go, hey, what do the class sizes look like? And the excuse is always, well, because of band. So that's always the thing. Yes, you're right. We have 28 kids in one and 7 in the other, or we have 33 in one and 10 in the other, and they always use band. That's always the excuse, right? So then when we get to high school, the same thing keeps happening. So is the excuse still band? Maybe we should switch band. But my point is, the administrators have been doing this every single year for so many years, and we keep doing the same thing. So no, I don't trust the administrators to get the class sizes under control. I don't. I just have zero confidence in that.
Is it, I mean, we're investing a lot in our superintendent and his
Well, it's
ability
the
to
guidance
lead us.
counselors. He doesn't do the class schedules. It's the guidance counselors.
Well, still, the district is under his management. And we have to extend trust to him and to Mr. Verhoff that they are going to work with counselors or building administrators to make sure that those are balanced. I don't know if it's an excuse or not, but it is part of what you only have so many periods in a day, and kids have options, and we love that they have options. And so band isn't an excuse. I think it's a reason. And so is chorus, and so are the kids that are going, to partake in classes off campus because they want college credits. Plus, there are a number of factors to balance, and I think that that's a huge job. But I don't want to take open enrollment and tuition away as one of those factors that then sort of, tie their hands.
So I'll add another layer to this, is the other reason why it's easy and I say easy because we always have so many, irons in the fire here, is how are we tracking this? We have all these people that, give you a piece of paper and say, I live on such and such street, and they come here, and then 3 months later, we get some parent call and say, hey, Bobby Smith does not go to school here. They're driving in from, whatever, Inglewood. So then that becomes an issue. And then my mind goes to this. This is the first year that we've had no open enrollment in a long time, because we had no open enrollment for years and years and years. Then it got changed, and then we just went back. And by the way, I got way more compliments saying thank you than I did, the people that were upset. So I'm confident in what I did. However, I have to ask myself, this year, you see all of this traffic. I very rarely have to go to the schools anymore, but I am in the last few weeks. The congestion around the middle school, I dropped kids off for 6 years. It's the whole time I've lived here, I've been in that little, the LT Ball Middle School area. It's never been that bad. So my mind says, do we have people driving here? Because if you don't live here, your kids can't take the bus. So, and we have all this, all this traffic congestion at Broadway. So I'm going, we might have the same kind of problem that Beaver Creek schools did. They did an audit and they found out they had like 200 kids that were coming there that were lying about their address. So all I'm saying is it's kind of odd that we end open enrollment and now we have like double the congestion. Why are so many people dropping and picking off? We've never had it like this, ever, in the 7 years I've been here. Sorry.
Just a correction though, if you don't live here and you're open enrolled, actually you can take the bus. If you meet poverty guidelines.
Well, thank you for that.
And so you have to be a little careful there. I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're talking about running one bus, clear over to
Some far part, so yeah, rural area.
a rural area to pick up one open enrolled child. But typically, you're right. No, they don't have bus privileges, but there is that exception.
So how do we monitor that, Mr. Stefanik? Like, if we have someone call in and say, Bobby Smith, not a student here. So what's the process? We've discussed this a couple times last year.
Yeah, we have access to an attendance officer that verifies residency as well. And so if we get information that tells us that somebody doesn't live here, we turn it over to the attendance officer who checks on the residency, and then she goes out and she
Perfect.
She not only checks governmental records, but she'll go out and she'll monitor the house, the address.
Yeah,
To make sure that the people that are supposed to be coming and going from that address are the people that are coming and going from that address.
And how much does that cost us per incident?
I think it's part of our ESC contract, isn't it?
I'm not sure what the cost is.
Yeah.
Truancy is included in the ESC.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, so we don't pay, And so
That's
we
good.
did that, the beginning of this year, we did that a little bit, and principals monitor and they get some information as well. And so
They're
they
always
can-
the first ones that find out.
They can
because-
trigger it from their own
Yeah.
buildings and get the attendance officer to check it out.
And a lot of
That's
times,
not new. We've always had that service through
Sure.
ESC. It's not new.
And I think we're getting a little off topic here. That's more of a violating the law and fraudulently registering in the school district when you're not versus open enrollment here. And I think that,
no, it was an open enrollment question, Simon, because I wanted to, because we talked about it last year. So I was just saying how do we follow up on open enrollment was my question.
well,
So I'm done with it. I'm
that's,
good.
I have a few things I need to points of clarification here, because I don't agree with a few things that have been said. I don't think we all agree that it was $500,000 last year that was discussed. The post that is being referenced, the post that's been referenced here is I said, and I'll quote, "It represents roughly $400,000 in the lost revenue paid to us by districts from which these students are coming from." Not a perfect statement, but it's not $500,000.
It
It's
wasn't
roughly
you, Simon.
$400,000.
It wasn't you.
Okay.
It was me.
Yeah.
Okay, and
No,
so
it was other
It
people.
was me.
So, well, fine,
It
but
was.
when we were advocating this, the other thing is when we argued about whether we're going to keep open enrollment or get rid of it, keep it or get rid of it, was we were going to save money and our class sizes needed it. We have not jumped from 15 students to 20 students with open enrollment or jumped down from 20 to 15. Our class sizes are relatively stable. And when you had 29 students that were truly open enrolled, not related to the teachers, spread across 12 grades or 13, you're not talking about adding 5 kids to class. Even if at the highest level of each class, which would have been 10, with 8 teachers, you're talking about 1 point something students per class. So getting rid of open enrollment didn't lower our class sizes. It didn't save us money. And as it relates to the application, I don't remember ever saying I agreed with something or other. And without the context of that, I don't feel that it's appropriate to say that I agree that there's an issue with the application, because I don't recall that. If it was discussed, it was discussed, but I referenced the context of that public meeting for anything that I may have said, but I don't remember saying anything related to that. If it relates to the application, eliminating open enrollment is like throwing a nuclear bomb because you've got a procedural problem. If it's bringing the school money, we need money. 5-year forecast doesn't look very good. And so just to say we're going to get rid of that, it's not good. Then letting the administrators do the work. I'm not saying that we say you have broad and subjective discretion to have an open enrollment. I'd say we design a policy that says what we want to accomplish. As it relates to math classes, it sounds like it's still a problem. So open enrollment wasn't the issue.
Right.
It sounds like it's more of a schedule and planning issue that needs to be addressed. And then, that relate to the congestion and things of that nature. Well, I think that, that is kind of anecdotal and without doing traffic study every year, it could be perception, it could be timing, it could be a lot of different things. But the one good thing is that from the facility standpoint, we did do a traffic study and there is a solution to that congestion if we build on that site that would improve the traffic flow much better than it is now and put it up to nationally acceptable standards. So if we went that route. So that's my response to those things.
Okay.
My other thing I might add is that I heard a lot of people from the community. We got letters, this board received letters. We had a lot of chatter in the community. It seemed like there was support for open enrollment and to accept tuition. So whether you throw whatever variables at it, I heard an overwhelming response for it. I
Because
didn't hear a lot of, I only heard,
Well, we all have different groups, right? The group of people that you talk to are not the same group that I talk
we
to.
received letters.
You know, we all talk to different.
And one more thing, we did not agree that we only lost 136,000 or 232,663 or 136,000. What I said is I believe we lost $369,463 based on what was qualified and what was paid in the year before and what I was expecting to be paid if it was qualified the same way. Ms. Zakor indicated that that wasn't appropriate from her conversations and her research. I am not going to dismiss that as inaccurate. I don't know the answer to that. And so I'm not going to unilaterally dismiss it. But if we did, and we only got 2,000 or we got rid of that, then 6,000 rather, it's 232,663 based on my math. If we go a step further and eliminate or add $2,000 back in for that, it would reduce that number. And that's if it was wrong. And I don't know that. So if you added 2,500 times it, because right now on that 236, just I want to make sure that I'm being fair here, that $232,663 figure is what I think that if Ms. Zakor is correct and you eliminate that categorization of that classification for the open enrolled on those students, if that's inappropriate, and you get rid of that 6,000, then we would be at 232,663. If you added back in 2,500 times those 40 students, which I had not done, you'd get an extra $100,000. But so you're still $132,663 short. We're not eliminating $132,663 in
You're
expenses.
short from a number that was incorrect to begin with. You can't.
Well, no,
We're
I'm
short from a number that
I fixed
should have
it.
been that number at the beginning.
The lowest, based on your analysis, the lowest number that we would have received with open enrollment would be $132,000,
Okay,
if you're correct.
I get it. So
So my understanding of it, if you're incorrect, and the way it's been applied previously and classified by our EMIS coordinator, we had received and we would have received roughly $369,463 that we lost. That's the
improper
stance.
class, right, okay. So I know this is a broad discussion. There are numbers, of course. I hope people that are listening will pause a minute and just savor the fact that we were really, whether we did get that money when we had open enrollment doesn't mean we deserved that money according to the system. Had these children been classified correctly or how they should have been, because there's a difference between payment for a child that's open enrolled versus payment for a child that comes and follows the employee that fits in the same category as the student who lives here in the district. So then there's issues about the scheduling. We've never really had a mission of, okay, we're 22 max or 21 max in math, 22 max in this. We've never really had these conversations. We never really had an explanation. How is it that a child who started in open enrollment in kindergarten, if we're really attentive to all these class sizes, how is it this child starts in open enrollment and goes all the way through 12th grade?
Yeah, at some point.
How is it that we never run into a glitch
Amen.
in the system of 6th grade or 7th grade or 10th grade?
Right.
It's like
the
once
bubble.
you're in like Flynn.
We call it the
And you
bubble
go all
class.
the way through. So that right there raises my peak of intelligence and interest that
Yep.
how are we really analyzing this on a year-to-year, class-to-class basis? And then here's a big one, and I hope we all join in on this discussion. We've had open enrollment in this district for contiguous districts. We have the option to have open enrollment for all districts. And I've never really heard a discussion out of anybody's mouth as to why we've chosen a contiguous over all districts. So I want to leave it at that, because to me, that is also a part of the open enrollment dialogue.
you've touched on that before.
And what
I
did
would
we say? I don't believe when I was here, Joellen.
No,
last year.
you have touched on that before because you said in the past, approximately this time last year, is that it would invite greater diversity because it would be all districts would then have the ability to open enrollment.
Anyone,
And I like that
anyone,
statement.
anyone in Ohio.
Yeah, I like that statement. I mean, you said it, I credit you for saying it.
Okay,
And
so
so I think that that's
I think that has to be a part of the conversation. You know, because now we've kind of we kind of took the frosting off and said, hey, our open enrollment forms, they would never look like that again. We're not gonna ask about.
That's a good way to put it.
Sports, we're not gonna ask about how many times you've been suspended.
Yeah.
We're not gonna, yes,
Yeah.
no. And so let's open it up all the way and talk about contiguous versus any district.
Well, I think something that I heard you say is that it's not your job as a board member to dive in and do all that research and then uncover all this information. And then I heard Teresa say, what I'm going to summarize here, these weren't your words, but pretty much a lack of trust in the people that we've put in these positions to do their jobs.
On the class
The
sizes.
numbers kept
On the
changing.
class
Joellen.
sizes. And to, you know,
I think there's other
to-
factors with class size. It's
Well,
not
Ann has
just
a great
about open
point. If it's
enrollment.
open enrollment, if you've been open enrolled your whole entire career at Tipp K through 12, how did you not get kicked out in a bubble class year? I mean, she has a great point, and that goes to what I'm saying. We can't just say, okay, we're gonna do open enrollment, but we're gonna cap it at 25 kids per grade band, because guess what? It doesn't happen. And I'm not gonna spend any more time on this, but it doesn't happen at the middle school and the high school. It just doesn't. And I said, until somebody can show me all of the math classes, 6 through 12, and exactly how many students is in each math class, maybe then I will change my mind. But until I get that, absolutely not. It is unacceptable to have that many kids in a math class, and we've been doing it the 7 years I've lived here. It's not okay with me. And listen, I'm one person. That is my sticking point. You have a sticking point. Mr. Patry does, Mrs. Dahl, Mrs. Zakor. We all have a sticking point. I've just been very open about mine, and it's never changed. I've had the same one consistently, and it hasn't gotten better. So my argument could be, well, I tell the administrators this every year, and every year, nobody cares.
Is it that
So
nobody
you see what I'm
cares?
saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but are there other factors that play?
I
into-
told you it is banned. They always say, well,
Well,
it's
there's
because it's
other-
banned.
Yeah.
Well, then, okay, I
It
get what
might
you're
be
saying.
French 3, it might be.
Well, then let's
other
fix
factors.
it. And you know, it's one thing to say, oh, my roof keeps leaking. And then 2 years later, oh, my roof keeps leaking. Your roof has been leaking for 3 years. Why have you not fixed it? Enough with the excuses. Fix it. So that's what I'm saying.
I think the solution is bringing up those types of issues as a board. And then if it's not being addressed to up the chain of command, then bring it up in a work session.
But not
And then-
everybody cares about the same thing, and they shouldn't, you know what I mean? That's my sticking point, but that doesn't mean anybody else cares about it, and nobody else has to. That's my personal thing. You have yours, we each have yours. That's why there's 5 of us. That's why, you know, we're all different. We get elected by different people. We all have little circles that we talk to, that we get information from, and they have their little concerns. And so, you know, and that's what makes us a diverse board. That just happens to be mine.
So,
But you know what I mean? It's,
can someone answer me, like, I know, okay, Teresa, you are definitely the longest, there's going into your 6th year, this is your 3rd year. What was the rationale behind the contiguous district?
We've never
open enrollment?
discussed
Does
it.
anybody have an answer for that?
never discussed it.
I think that, and I don't know this to say, I'm just presuming
Yeah.
that maybe that's how other districts around us did it as well. I don't know. I don't know why we did it that way. I think it's a decent conversation to have. To reiterate, how do you go from year to year to year and still be allowed open road to go through all 12 grades, even in those bubbles? You have to recognize that there are other factors, just like other factors that impact whether you have 32 or 7 in a math class. There's factors related to kids move in, kids move out. Some families choose other options. It's a fluid number.
And for-
It changes from day to day. So to say you have a leaky roof, fix it, I don't think it's that simple. There are other factors that contribute to your concern. But
Okay,
to
that's
say
fine.
they never fix it is that they don't fix it to the way you want it to be fixed.
It's not me, it's other parents. It's, you know what I'm saying? This isn't about me and my kids. My kids have done fine in math. I mean, my gosh, it's the parent that called me today. My daughter comes home crying. I mean, those are the kind of stories I hear, and it breaks my heart because, I told her like an online tutoring kind of thing that she could use. But I hate that. I hate that any kid does not like going to school because they feel like they are not intelligent enough to learn. That's heartbreaking to me. Those are the kinds of reasons why I ran for school board. Because every kid deserves to come to school and feel like, I'm going to learn today. You know what I mean? I'm here to learn. And that's exciting to me. But when I hear kids who don't want to get out of the car, they start crying when the mom backs down the drive, that breaks my heart. Like, that's a situation that needs addressed. And that's my passion point, and that's what I care about. So that's just me.
Well, I think from a parent calling and crying about something that's going on with their child, I think it's important that we relay that to the proper administrators and teachers so that they can then evaluate it and deal with it. And then if there's an ongoing concern or an issue, then I think we need to bring it up to a board meeting so that everybody, or a work session, so we can evaluate it. From a contiguous school district or non-contiguous school district, I have no clue what the reasoning was back then, and none of us can really do that other than maybe going through the minutes, and if they have videos, go through the videos. But I think from my standpoint, if we're evaluating this, you have the whole, in my opinion, the whole reason you want to have open enrollment is to provide us some flexibility to maintain stable class sizes. And then the times that we do need to fill in classes a little bit with students, that we get a financial benefit. Depending on outside of the contiguous school districts, if we're still responsible for transportation at certain events, those types of things that could increase our costs and reduce the benefit of open enrollment, I think need to be considered. The other thing is, I think our policies related to open enrollment need to be considerate of the true value that a student can receive in education. If you have, I'm not sure contiguous school district, and I don't know if it has to be school district or what the legal things are. I think that have to be evaluated and educated on. But to me, a distance-based measure versus contiguous would make more sense, so that you don't have students getting stuck and getting in a car and being in a car for 45 minutes because they're going to go to Tipp City and then being completely exhausted all day. And then 45 minutes back, they have an hour and a half commute per day. Those are types of things that really truly impact the kids' ability to function and perform. And then if they're having a hard time performing or whatever because they're in the car too long and they're tired, well, that's a problem. And in other words, they're not coming to school. Truancy becomes an issue. I mean, those are all things I think that would have to be evaluated, properly vetted. And I think those are all worthwhile discussions. I think they need to be explored. The only thing I feel that last year, it was very clear that the reason we got rid of open enrollment was because of cost and class sizes. If that's not the case, then that's fine. I just feel that from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, it makes sense financially if we have proper policies in place. And I think that's what I'm in favor of exploring.
There was another entry into why I think open enrollment also got defeated, was because, and I'm not going to be shy about this, I was elected by Tipp people, and my first loyalty is to Tipp and to Tipp kids. And that's, what I feel strongly about. And they're the ones, that I believe we have to answer to first and foremost. And there was some dialogue, but what I can remember is that sometimes the open enroll kids would come here, and we've actually read a statement where one said she'd have a hard time getting on the team at a school in Troy, but had an easy time. Her skill sets were such that she could get on a team in Tipp. But then you ask yourself, okay, well, that's good for her, but what about the Tipp kid who maybe has lesser skill sets than she does, but would like to be on the Tipp team, So there was that discussion that sometimes the open, and again, we had an open enrollment form asking them what kind of sports and stuff. So they come in and maybe bump some Tipp kids that could be on a team. And I just feel really passionate about that. Sorry, I know that's maybe not a popular belief now.
I think there's.
But I won't apologize for championing I won't apologize for championing for Tipp families first. I'm just not gonna.
I view that issue differently, and so I think that's a valid point for that individual student who doesn't make the team. I do also feel that I'm here to represent the taxpayers and the school district residents. And so when I look at it from my perception and my viewpoint is that we need the funds to help us operate here and there, and that's useful. To the extent that one child doesn't make the baseball team that's in school district because someone that's open enrolled is better and makes the team, I think that's going to be disappointing for that child. But looking at it from a school district standpoint and the other teammates on that team, they may be very happy to have a better performing player that performs better. And that team as a whole will maybe do better and perform better and maybe advance further along in the competitions. And so if we're looking at it from school district and not individual student member, which I think is our task, at least from my perception, that whole not making the team thing doesn't very persuade me. I mean, if my son's anything like me, his pursuits will not be athletic. I hope he's funny, but hopefully he's more like his mother. But I don't know that yet. But I would still make that decision if he was just like me. And so that's my feeling on that.
That's just one shade, one sliver of a dimension in the whole total comprehensive picture. And we don't know what those numbers are, quite honestly. But we just can't make these comprehensive statements like if we have 29 students and we divide it by 12 grade levels, that's roughly 2.4 students per grade, and therefore we're not overburdening anything. We can't make a statement like that. We don't know where those 29 students are aggregated and what grades.
It could be 4 sets of twins all in the same grade, and you have no idea what's going to happen.
It's just kind of a meaningless debate to say, to just wrap it up, 29 divided by 12, therefore.
Well, I spoke with Dave about it, and they were roughly pretty evenly divided on that number, correct? On the class?
Ranges between 2 and 10.
For the total, out of district?
Yes.
Okay. So even on the worst case scenario, you're talking about one, which is out of district, not necessarily just open enrolled, on those numbers that are class specific, it'd be a little over 1 on the worst. And that's only one example on the grade. After that, it'd be 1 student per class. So I think we can say that. What we can't say is going from 15 to 20 kids. And that's what I was trying to address with that statement.
Yeah.
Well,
Can I make a statement about, I think that whole sports analogy is arbitrary because, the kids that are homeschooled, they're eligible to try out for the baseball team and they might make it compared to somebody who is in person. So
well, they
to use that argument, I don't think
they
really.
can try out for it.
Yeah, they can try out and they might make it
but
as
they're in
well.
the
They might
district.
make it.
They're in the district, Joellen.
Yes, but it's sort of the same argument is
Well, no,
that.
it's really not.
No, it's not, because they live here and their parents pay taxes here.
Yeah.
So they're a Tipp City resident.
And
She's
Joellen,
talking
and
about kids
please,
from Zia.
I know the public, some of them, they're gonna take one statement, they're gonna take one, and then they're just gonna knit that all up into something really big and broad. And that, that's not, there are multiple layers to this open enrollment discussion. That's all I'm saying, and it's not a simple bam, 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 makes good sense. There's a lot of layers and I like to look at them all.
Well, I just go back to, as an administrative team, right now there's so much going on. I mean, having no open enrollment just gives them one less thing to deal with. It's like, boom, it's done. It's black and white. We have so many gray things that we deal with. We don't have HR. I mean, the last thing we need is just to keep adding more and more, daily duties on top of just educating kids. Who knows what next year is going to look like. We're coming back from COVID. Everybody is sending these emails from ODE or, whatever educational, website emails we get from, closing the gap. What's it going to look like? These kids that have been online, what's it going to look like catching them up to what the in-person learners have been doing? So there's going to be a lot of things. We're coming on the tail end of this. We're going to be having to deal with a different set of, situations and, scenarios in the fall when school starts in August.
I guess I'm just concerned that There's two critical positions sitting right there. We have invested a lot of work in hiring Mr. Stefanik, and we hired him based on his ability to come and do his job. And we're losing Dave, and we're going to be hiring another treasurer. And I'm concerned about the people that we're losing, and this board's, what I perceive is getting involved in the daily administrative duties. That's their job. There has to be a degree of trust that they are doing their job. I don't want to do their job. We're not qualified to do
Well,
their
that
job.
goes back to Ann's point, then they should be providing this board with information. I feel like, and there's a difference between, micromanaging and accountability.
Yeah.
So when you have a work session meeting and you don't provide your board members with like a packet of information, like all the numbers that Simon went over, all the numbers that Ann went over, a board member shouldn't have to spend an hour and a half on the phone with ODE. That should all be presented to us. So it gets kind of fuzzy.
We were provided an opportunity and offered.
Absolutely.
Hold on, we got an email. Everybody in this board got an email and offered the time and opportunity to meet with whoever we needed to meet related to open enrollment so they could answer our questions. I took that opportunity and I met with Dave and I asked him, I said, look, I don't care what the numbers are. I just want to know the facts. I don't care where they fall. And we went through the numbers and I asked him how he was getting them. And that's how we broke down the 14 and the 40 and then the 29 is we went through all that and we took the time together and he provided me the great information that was very valuable. I think that they're there for us. But for some reason, we just keep going outside sources and respectfully, the information being brought back by a board member who's not an administrator, who hasn't obtained an opinion, may be correct, but it may be incorrect. And so if we have potential issues, I think that we need to address those through providing marching orders to the administration to get them from people that are qualified to provide them and to give it to us. And I think there's a very important part that hasn't been asked is Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Stevens and Mr. Veerhoff, do you have any idea how you feel about whether open enrollment would be beneficial to the school district or not?
I asked all three that.
I have had experience with, to address some of the questions over here, I've had experience with the statewide open enrollment procedure. So it went well beyond the contiguous districts. It was managed. There was a structure for making decisions about whether there was space for open enrolled students or not. And it was done on an annual basis. And students that potentially were fine K through 3 were told no in 4th grade because there was some kind of a bubble or there was some kind of an issue. But there are students that can go for long stretches of time because there was a tiered system. And so if you were an open enrolled student the previous year, you were a higher ranking than somebody that was a brand new open enrolled applicant, down at the bottom. So again, as some people may have moved out, you got one of those early slots, and then some of the people that were brand new to the open enrollment process may have been told no because then you hit the limit. If for people that are interested in the financial pieces, of open enrollment, if you have open enrolled students coming in and they're functioning inside of class structures that you already have, then you don't incur the most expensive piece of education, which are the personnel expenses. Okay. So yes, your budget can see enhanced numbers, from open enrollment. But I think Simon may have mentioned it earlier on, with the building that's going on in Tipp City, there may be some grade levels or some years where you say no to a lot of the applicants, and then your number, that's going to come into your budget is relatively low. Again, I feel bad that, and the form, open enrollment is based on space available.
That's it.
Period.
Yes, I understand that the form that you're, the
You
questions you're not allowed to
Name-
delve into under Ohio's open
pretty
enrollment.
much name, address, child's grade
Exactly.
level is
That's it.
basically what the form is.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so
Right.
I feel bad that there were concerns about the previous open enrollment process. I wasn't here, so I can't speak to it. But there is an operational structure that you work in, and you can ensure that you don't have to add teachers because you said yes to too many out-of-district students. You don't have to incur, significant expenses. There might be some materials and supplies and maybe technology that, goes up a little bit. But again, you don't start adding personnel to take care of open enrollment decisions.
No, but at the same time, you also don't allow classrooms to get so voluminous because you haven't added personnel. And
Oh, no, you're right.
so that's,
Right.
let's not stop the dialogue of saying you don't add personnel. Of course you don't add, but to make it cost advantageous. But at the same time, you don't pile more kids in a classroom because nobody's looked at the numbers and said, sorry, you can't come this year.
No.
So,
No, the additional staff is triggered by increases in residential enrollments. And then that
exactly.
that is the data you use to make open enrollment decisions. That's how that works. But just a quick example, and then I'll let Dave and Steve talk. Numbers change over the years, what class sizes people are comfortable with. But the class size format that we were working off of a decade ago, we wanted our classes to be average class size of 24 or below. Is what we were looking for. And we cut off the yeses for open enrollment at 22. So a typical grade level here, primary, has 8 or 9 teachers. So that would give you 16 to 18 slots per grade level for the new house down the road to get built mid-year and that family to move in. And you don't typically see an increase in 1 year's time of 18 to 20 students per grade level at every grade level. So that was our buffer so that open enrollment didn't impact staffing or class size decisions. And so you were sitting there at the 22 average or the 24 average. And yeah, you had to look some people in the eye that you had known and worked with for 3-4 years. But the residents, grew in that grade level. And so you had to tell them, no, your annual application this year is not accepted. And I actually held that position, for several years, that I was the one that had to give the no letters, to people and make those phone calls or take the follow-up phone call after they got the no letter. And you just, it's not fun.
No.
It is a tough thing for, the relationship between the family and the school district, but this really is a class size driven, process. And so it can work, if the structure's in place and the folks follow the structures in place. And I'll go to the other point saying at the high school level, there are going to be, it's tough to have the exact same class size in every bell, but
Absolutely.
you try to minimize the gap between, you don't want a 30 and a 10. You want, maybe you don't want, but you may end up with a 27 and a 21, or
That's close
something like
enough.
that.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
a big difference.
Those type,
between 30 and 10.
you don't want the extremes. And so you look out there how to set that up. And so that you minimize that distance between your high one that is kind of pushing the limits of comfortable class sizes or have exceeded that a little bit, and then back down to what you really would like all your classes to be. But again, it's happening again this year, so that's not an open enrollment situation. That's you got to dig into the schedules and see what the factors are that are triggering that.
So from a financial and class size perspective, your position is it could be financial beneficial if you have the appropriate policies with appropriate buffers and construct in place, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's appropriate depending on the other stuff that you may be considering.
Yes. And
That's a lot of ifs.
yeah, but
There's a lot of human error in there.
Yeah, but your piece to that is that a yes to open enrollment doesn't automatically mean bigger class sizes. That's the structure you put over top of it to make sure it doesn't impact it that way.
I don't think there's any argument that open enrollment, when done properly and effectively, serves districts and serves some districts very well. And we're talking about some districts up north that are open enrolling 1,000 students. Okay, we're not talking about 50 some. And they are on the need for resources and finances. That's not my argument. I think that open enrollment can be very beneficial for a lot of districts. But we are a little different here. We have very high educational standards. We have a great report card. We have a great booming housing community. We have a lot of those assets, but I do want to say about the trust issue, Joellen, because I feel that was sort of unfair towards me to say I don't trust, because when I sat at this open enrollment meeting in 2020, and the first figure I heard was $500,000.
Do you want to know why? It's because that was on the
If
September
Mr. Stevens,
report.
if you will, please. Thank you. I would appreciate it. So, you know, I accepted that. I thought, I don't know much about open enrollment, so I continued. And then that number did change from 500 to 440, I believe. And then we had different numbers of students, and we did not have that one report that Corinne and I looked at that was generated for our benefit, because we kept asking more questions about open enrollment. We had the districts. We started looking at these kids. Well, wait a minute, that's not contiguous to Tipp City. How is that student on this list? Which segued into identifying 13 non-contiguous students. So, Joellen, I just please hope you can understand that when the sets of information keep changing, that to me, it's the prudent thing to pick up the phone and go directly to the horse's mouth, which is the Ohio Department of Education. It's not about a trust. It's about me wanting to kind of get that sort of final version of what it should be.
The non-contiguous students you're referring to, this open enrollment here, it really should say out of district.
Well, first
And
of all,
so when you said you
Simon,
discovered-
would you please orient me to what you're referencing?
I'm referencing the open enrollment sheet that you're indicating that you guys discovered, reviewing that and looking at the data, you
83 number.
realized in
No,
2020 that we
smaller.
had.
That's not the same.
Oh, it's the same one from last year, just a smaller piece of paper.
Which side is it on?
Right here.
Here?
And
I just printed, copied it and taped it together so I'd have
Yeah, it's
one
right here.
uniform thing. Yes.
83, yes, right here.
Yeah.
So that 13,
Oh, 83.
it was really 14 non-contiguous students. Those are part of the superintendent's agreement. That's what
Well, that
was
changed
included in
again.
that.
Because when we met with Dave, he said it was 13.
The
so-
13 is how much we got money because we were locked into 2018, 2019. So we really had 14 students, but because we were locked in by the budget, what passed, we were locked into 2019 fiscal numbers, not the 2020 figure. So even though we had 14, we were locked into the 13 on that number.
But the bigger picture there, Simon, thank you, and I do appreciate that finite piece. But the bigger picture is, we weren't even told when we had our initial open enrollment discussion. I was left clearly with the mindset these were all contiguous district kids. We didn't even have anybody say a non-contiguous district. Do you remember that? Until we got that sheet and Newton was on there, and I'd have to pull the sheet out.
Pick one.
Was pick one, okay.
Pick one left.
And then that's what probed my questioning. And so I'm not going to dummy down.
Franklin
I
Road.
told you that. I'm not going to dummy down and just go along to get along and not ask questions. I mean, otherwise, this is not what I enjoy.
No, and I think the answer to the question is often determined by the way it's asked. And we asked how many were open enrolled and how many were teacher kids.
Yes,
We didn't say contiguous school districts and and so,
you're right.
so that's part of the reason we got the information. And I know that Mr. Stevens did say 500,000 initially, but he corrected that in a subsequent meeting. I remember that. Am I
Well,
correct,
yeah.
Mr. Stevens?
Yeah, you did, Dave, and sorry to interrupt, Simon, but we're both saying the same thing. He said it that one time, it got corrected, but it was And Ann was not,
Corrected again.
Ann was not going after you. It took off on social media. That $500,000 number just,
400,000.
it just stuck on social media. So at this point, does anybody have anything new to add to the open enrollment discussion that we haven't already discussed tonight before we move on?
I don't think we gave Dave and Steve an opportunity to respond.
I agree with Mr. Stefan.
Okay.
Mr. Bearhoff?
I don't have anything to add to the discussion.
I
Okay,
have a question before we move on.
I asked everybody, so go ahead.
And I'm sorry,
No, it's okay.
I didn't pull up the open enrollment policy. When do we make the decision on this for this year? What meeting?
It's supposed to be the March meeting.
It would be the next board meeting in 2 weeks. Is it the,
22nd.
And,
whatever, the 2 Mondays from today? Yeah,
okay.
Mr. Stefan,
22nd.
I have a request or a question, I'm not sure if it can be answered, is if you and Mr. Stevens could get together and tell us if there was an appropriately crafted policy that was designed to maintain class sizes and consider the need to maybe fill classes when they drop down to lower numbers, the way you feel is appropriate, if it would benefit the district to do open enrollment. I'd kind of be interested to know what your opinion is at the next meeting, because I think that's helpful to me. I think that based on my understanding, when open enrollment is done appropriately, that's kind of one of the functions you're doing, is you're trying to just maintain your class sizes the same size. And then when there's room, you add; when there's not, so long as you have a buffer and policy. And so if you guys think that's appropriate, or if you don't have an answer, that's fine too, but I'd be interested to know what your ultimate opinion would be.
Can you just put that in a Friday board? I'm sorry, are you asking him to write a policy? I'm a little confused.
No, not a
Okay,
policy.
so we'll get a policy.
Just presume that
Okay.
there's a policy that would be in place to address any concerns that would bring this out of whack. And I'm sure that you could provide us some guidance on that. But I think we can vote for open enrollment and then maybe develop a policy or bring a policy in. I don't know, but I think that, I know that we have COVID and everything else, but if it's not too tasking on the administration, I think it's, from a fiscal standpoint, in my opinion, it's urgent that we get that money back in.
So when you say benefit, do you simply mean more in the black?
Yes.
So in order to do that, we have to then have an agreement on what a student costs.
The student per pupil cost is divided among the population.
Well, I just think that in order to have an agreement and an understanding on a fiscal benefit, we have to understand first what we agree is the cost of a student.
When I went through those numbers, and I confirmed with Dave that I was correct, is that we did not realize a saving on the per pupil cost by limiting open enrollment. The net result of that was increasing our per pupil cost. Is that correct, Mr. Stevens?
If you remove a student, costs stay the same, then the cost per student go up.
So you would like to propose that we calculate a benefit without at all saying that a student cost our district anything?
So this is the issue that we were having last year, is that there's this perception that if you eliminate a student, you're going to get a dollar reduction in your operating expenses. We've just gone through that. That's not.
No, I don't
believe that.
I don't recall that conversation.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
Well, I guess I don't understand it, because we just went through the amount of money that we lost. The fact that we didn't have any reduction in instructional staff.
That we lost based on the way we build those kids.
Even if you have $132,000, we have not reduced our expenses by $132,000.
I guess, Simon, what I'm saying is that if we're going to calculate a benefit based off of open enrollment dollars that we get per student, we have to say what it cost to educate a student. Because open enrollment students cost our district something. And if we're going to be equitable, and if we're going to say we welcome diverse students from diverse backgrounds, some students come with a greater cost. I don't think this is a question that we can actually ask Mr. Stefanik or Mr. David or Mr. Stevens to do that has an equitable and honest answer. Because if you calculate the cost of one student with disabilities and all the associated services that they are required to have in order to have an equitable educational experience, that cost is greater. And it should be, because that student deserves those services.
Well, I'm not even going to break it down per student. I'm just going to look at the aggregate and the total numbers, because it doesn't matter what one individual, because it's all divided among all the kids. And so very easily we can understand that question. Mr. Stevens, last year, depending on the numbers, we either lost $369,463 in income based on how we did it the year before, and we would have received if we followed the same classification, or on the worst case scenario, we would have reduced it to $132,663 in income. Under either scenario, by eliminating those 29 students, did we reduce the expenses of the district by more than $132,000?
No.
Thank you.
Can I also say that I do agree with you that it is important how we ask a question. And your question is based on the fact that these students cost us nothing and that they only bring with them money.
Yes.
And I don't think that's fair to taxpayers when then we turn around and say to them, we need more from you to educate our students. And I think, again, that is why focusing on the financials is not furthering this discussion, because if we just go by what the CUP report says, every student in Tipp City costs, like, I think close to $10,000 if we just use that as a basis.
Report.
Okay, if we just use ODE and we go to the report card, and that's something that a lot of parents do access and understand. It says that our cost to educate a student is like $9,500. That's the information that parents can access from ODE report cards.
We don't have to speculate. We know the answer.
Well,
We reduced our class admission by 29 students, and the cost associated, the money they would have brought in, depending on what you believe, would be no less than $132,000. And we didn't reduce our expenses with that loss of the students. So we can focus on individual cost per student and talk about special needs and everything else. But at the end of the day, the reality is we know for a fact that we did not save money by eliminating those students. We lost money.
We know, excuse me, Ann, we know based on the way you would like to calculate it,
yes.
one thing. And we know based on the way ODE presents the financial information to parents about the healthiness of a district, another thing. That's why I'm saying, Mr. Patry, I think it's damaging to this board to focus this question on financials, because it's all about how you frame the question. And we have to have a common understanding of what we're talking about to even agree on the answer to that question. And if you say we have to add A and B, and I say we have to subtract A and B, we're not going to get to the same, and we're never going to get there because we don't have a common place to build from.
Well, that's fine. And I'll agree that we don't have a common place to build from, but I'm comfortable with the assertions I've made as confirmed by Mr. Stevens, our treasurer.
Well, Mr. Stevens, would you also confirm that on the ODE website, the cost is approximately $92,000 on the report card to educate one student? 92, that's what it says, that Tipp City, it costs Tipp City $9,200 to educate every student. What we receive for every student that is open enrolled is not that. So there could also be the argument that we have to then go to our taxpayers and ask for more money to subsidize the education of an open enrollment student.
Well, if you take away one student from that equation, then the cost to educate a student could go up $5 to $9,205. It is not a $9,200 savings because one kid went away.
It means you're actually increasing the per pupil cost. You're not reducing it. Your scenario does not result in a savings. It results in an increase in per pupil cost.
Either way, Simon, focusing this discussion on this and using more of our treasurer's time is not going to bring any new additional information to the table that will help this board come to a resolution one way or the other. It's just going to divide people that observe our board. And it is our job to always put the students and the staff in this district first. And this is a discussion that has for the past 2 hours furthered us from that goal.
I believe I'm furthering it.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that we don't have greater understanding of something that could possibly work. We have a lot of, I'm not saying more than we had last year to work from, as far as I'm concerned, so.
Well, hopefully we have a greater understanding that our teachers' kids should not be billed as open enrollment kids. They should be billed as following the employee according to the state guidelines. And whether or not you get, I said I want to follow district policy, state and federal laws. That's what the ODE says, the way they should be categorized, and that's the way I feel that we should be doing that. And with that comes that $2,400 they get, that same state share index calculation as our Tipp resident kids do.
I agree with you on that, Ann, and I think that it needs to be understood. If you're correct, we have a fiduciary responsibility to do that. And so
Yes, we do.
I would join you in that concern if it's accurate.
Well,
And I would move that we authorize our administrators to seek counsel from attorneys to understand whether that's the case or not. And so that going forward, that we understand how we're classifying.
got a better suggestion. Cost the taxpayer zero money. Just reach out to our area coordinator at ODE. He does this. He knows this stuff. Dave's spoken to him, I'm sure, many times.
Yeah, he's the
Mr. Smith, so you don't need to reach out to an attorney. He probably knows more than attorneys on this.
right.
This is what he lives, breathes, and does. Very, very cordial, very easy to talk to.
What was his name again?
Andrew Smith.
Andrew Smith.
You don't need to bring.
Well, I think the ODE's got a vested interest in how much we
At
get
least
paid,
at
though.
this point, excuse me?
I think an objective view from an attorney, in my opinion, of this issue would be more valuable than a state agency.
I don't know, what's the attorney, I'm sorry, what is the attorney gonna do? I'm just confused, I'm trying to understand this.
He's with
What
the
is the
Ohio
attorney gonna
Department of
do?
Education. It's
Yeah.
his job. I don't think he's.
Right, I mean,
He has a self-interest in this, Simon. He's telling them,
I
I
don't-
think, like it is.
Right.
He's a former superintendent.
Mr. Stefanik, do you understand Simon's need for the attorney? I mean, I just don't understand.
Talk about taxpayers' money.
Yeah,
I mean, I just don't, right? I mean, we could call Andrew Smith at ODE.
yeah, if there's a
We don't need an attorney.
coordinator, he can give us the information.
I mean, Dave, Dave's the treasurer, he follows up.
Please fact check me. I'm all.
Yeah,
okay
Dave
with
follows
that.
up with EMIS, so
My
I don't
goodness.
see the need for an attorney. Unless I completely missed something. You know, if I did miss something, I will apologize, but from the conversation that I'm understanding, I don't see the need for an attorney.
I see a very
But I-
significant need for an attorney on this question, and I would suggest that we follow it without articulating any further our discussion.
Well, I would just say, Mr. Stefanik just described how he followed this process in a previous district, and it sounds like he has the competency and the background to put some sort of framework in place for our district. We have information from Dave every single month for the last 12 months. He's talked about revenues lost, some attributed to open enrollment. We've also seen a decline in our interest from our investments. So again, open enrollment can be a financial tool why do we want to tie the hands of our future new treasurer coming in? Who are we going to attract if we're not going to suggest that we trust what they're going to come up with? That they're going to follow those rules.
Well, I'd like to ask a question of our treasurer then, Mr. Stevens. Why were we told that the teachers' kids are open enrollment kids and bringing $6,020 per student?
Because some of them are. And I'm not an open enrollment expert,
What do you mean some of them are? I don't
because
understand.
some of them were considered open enrolled because they live contiguously to the district.
But their parent was an employee of the district.
Well, they're still contiguous to the district.
So
If
so in
hadn't
other
filled out the
words,
information like
so in other
anybody
words,
else.
they were not categorized, and that wasn't submitted to the ODE in that manner as following the employee. They were submitted as being an open enrolled student.
So that's definitely something that we can, well, we don't have an open enrollment now, but it's something, and then when we do delve into these kinds of conversations, it's okay to say we've been doing it
We're learning.
right,
And we're
exactly.
improving.
Yeah,
Love
this,
that.
right, exactly. And, it's important that you ask questions and always continuous improvements. It's hard to talk with a mask on. So, we're learning, right?
Yes.
So all you can do is say, got it, check it off the box, I'll look into it, and,
I would.
Lesson
renew-
learned, that's all you can do.
Renew my suggestion that we go through the training on this issue.
but I don't understand on what issue, attorney,
Yeah,
for
what
what,
is
I'm
the
confused
issue?
on that. I don't understand.
Simon, why don't you pick up the phone and call Mr. Smith? I mean, seriously, you have just as much access to these people as I do.
Yeah, I don't understand why we're calling an attorney, and I
Really, I mean, it's
completely missed the point on
reach out
that.
and touch someone. It's so simple.
We're reaching out to those resources, but we're not reaching into the resources that we have
Well,
here.
that's why I'm confused. I just don't understand.
No, I suspect this reporting example that you're bringing up, there may be nuances like that related to other EMIS reporting systems that may not be right, they may not be wrong. You could ask different districts and they may do it two separate ways, but it's still okay. And that's a critical position. We just talked about how critical that position is. And so we now have a vacancy for that position. We have a vacancy for treasurer, for EMIS and for treasurer. And so, if we're not using the resources that we have, what kind of resources, what kind of folks are we going to even attract to the districts if it's this much scrutiny and we tie their hands and not give them the tools to do their job?
Scrutiny?
Yeah, I don't think that happened. I
You
mean,
don't want to be.
Well, you just said that you and Corinne delved in.
no, that
and
was
you-
last year. They just like Simon did this week,
But you
just like Simon did with Dave this week or whatever, when Simon referenced that. Corinne and Ann brought that information to the board last year when they went and met with Dave for an hour, 2 hours? 2 hours, hour and a half in his office. So, I mean, that's how we can't have all 5 of us come in and meet, and then you share the
See, Joellen,
information.
I'm glad that I asked for the open enrollment form. I'm glad that I saw things that were requested of these students that by law should not be asked. I'm glad that we have that discovered. And I'm glad that perhaps we'll never do that again if open enrollment is reinstated. You see, I don't feel remorseful for discovering these things. I feel like I'm doing a good service to make things better. And so when I discover things that maybe haven't been done right, that to me, that should not become now my burden of shame.
I'm not trying to shame you, Ann. I'm suggesting
Well,
that
I
Mr.
feel like
Stefanik-
it when you keep saying you're scrutinizing the administrators.
Mr. Stefanik just answered the questions about what he did in another district, and he made it very clear what goes on the form. The form says name, address, and what grade are you
We're in
going to be in?
agreement.
Oh, yeah,
He's
yeah.
clear on that.
No, well,
He
but
understands.
this
Well,
last
right,
piece
and-
but the last piece about calling the consultant at ODE,
Yeah.
that's about the different classification systems, and that's one part I was not a part of. And so if Dave has already talked to him about that, he's got the information.
But we have an
It'll be a
EMIS
quick
person,
phone
that
call.
should be the EMIS person's job. You know what I mean? You have enough on your plate, Mr. Stefanik. This isn't you. What you do is you take this information, you say, hey, Katie, this came up, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just, there's always two ways to look at something. So, we just want to make sure that we're doing it the correct way. Maybe she is, maybe she isn't, but no one says it was purposeful, but it's something that came up that needs to be addressed. It's so simple. We don't need to make it emotional. This isn't about emotion. This is just about,
Well, it kind of gets emotional.
Well, it
when you
shouldn't
feel-
be.
When you
Right.
feel like you're being criticized for doing extra work.
right,
Hey, I didn't have to do this.
right.
I'm not
I
trying to
didn't have
shame
to
you,
give
Ann.
up my time.
I
to
appreciate you
call.
did all that extra work. I'm not shaming
Well,
you for
I
that.
certainly didn't pick up.
I'm just suggesting that
You accused her of scrutinizing the administrators.
I don't think
That
she's
was the
doing
whole
that. I
thing.
think she's just indicating that we should empower our administration to be able to do their jobs.
I think we've had enough. Moving on to item 3C, Community Reinvestment Act discussion. And I've been sending everybody emails. This isn't going to be a long conversation. I just wanted to reach out to the board to see how any of you think, or if you have any thoughts on what I've sent you. And if you feel like it's worth our time to try to have a conversation with City Council. there are some articles, for instance, here's one. Youngstown School Board sends message to City Council by rejecting tax abatement. This case in Youngstown seems to be the biggest. With all of the proposed CRA abatements that City Council has, that's going to be a revenue loss to the schools. Last year, we lost about $420,000, $450,000, and that was without the Meyer abatement that we all voted on last March. So I just wanted to get some general feedback on how board members felt about this, if it's something worth looking at or not.
I don't think it's worth looking at. And the reason is you're talking about undeveloped farmland that has, I mean, I could be wrong, Dave, but it's probably not bringing too much cash in the door. And you're bringing in commercial development that's going to financially benefit Tipp City as a whole. And we want to develop as a city. And that will in turn then help us in the future relate to our residents and an increasing future. I think you got to look at, you know, what we're trying to save here. And to me, there's a reason these are valuable and they work. And I don't think that trying to obstruct that process that'll help us develop the way we need to as a city is going to benefit us.
I'm not talking about obstructing the process. The school board has the ability to negotiate the amount of the abatement. That's what I'm asking.
Above 50%.
Yeah.
So it's only if the corporation approaches the school board and asks for either an extension or if they ask for a percentage more than 50%. And Simon's right. If you're getting taxes from a farmer that owns 63, acres of farmland, that amount is nominal compared to, let's say, Meyer, who's doing a $70 million renovation in addition to that same farmland. You're getting 50% of the $70 million increase that they've now invested in that land. So to say we're losing money, I don't think we are.
And you're generating
generating
income tax from the employees, which helps our operating budget as a city.
If the payroll is over $1 million.
Yes.
The
Payroll
has
is
to be
$1
over $1
million
million.
in that newly renovated
Yeah, for us to
area.
get anything.
But
When you say us, who are?
Well, not me, Tipp City Schools.
if the payroll is over $1 million, all the property or all of the income taxes that are received by the city can shares that income tax with the district. We have two properties, Abbott and Meyer. We receive 50% of the income taxes that they receive. And then there's another one that we receive, I think it's 32.5% on, and that was done by a contract. We have a contract with that. I think that was done before our time, my time here. 32.5, that was Fieldstone.
And if it's less than that, the city still gets the income tax from the workers, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If it's less than that, if it's less than $1 million, then the city doesn't have to share any of that with us. And if it's over, so if they're trying to provide up to 50%, an abatement can be provided to a company up to 50%, and it requires no school action.
Right.
And all they have to do is notify the school district, which is what they tried to do with the Meyer issue a year or
That's
so
March.
ago.
Yeah, it was March.
Yeah, if it's over 50%, the city they have to come to us and the school board has to approve it to be over 50%.
Right.
So if they stayed at 50% for every single abatement for the rest of the,
Yeah, then we can't do anything.
there's nothing we can do about it.
Right. Do you have any opinion, Corinne?
So currently, Dave, we are losing because of affected abatements. We have a loss of $450,000 every year. And where does that come from?
It's not every year, and all it is they develop the property and put a building on it, and they're just not being taxed for all of it. So if it was
It's an
farmland,
incentive for new businesses to come to
It's an
Tipp, like
incentive
we'll
for
give you
new
a
businesses to
15-year abatement,
yes.
and you'll get like
So
a
it's property-
50% tax
it's
rate.
property tax
Yes.
that we're
Correct.
losing.
So that company pays half of,
So every year there's $450,000 loss in property tax from the existing abatements that the city negotiated with businesses
Correct.
for whatever reason, to draw them in.
Now, there's an abatement, maybe of that amount. The loss is the difference between the farmland's income and what we're not getting after that. And so
If the land was only worth $10,000 in taxes a year because it was farmland, and then they go and put a $70 million building on it, and suddenly we're getting $450,000 in taxes on it that used to be $10,000.
Yeah.
We've gained $440,000, but if the property was, if the taxes on it was, let's say it was supposed to be taxed at $900,000 and they've given them a 50% abatement, we're just not getting that 450, but we're still getting 440,000 more than what it was when it was land.
Yeah, and the whole point of these developments is it's incentivizing people to come to the school district. So the net result is it's increasing income tax for the city, which is helpful for the city's operating budget without having to put a lot of infrastructure in and things of that nature. And then the other thing it does is if it brings some money in, it's going to be a net result, a huge boost for us.
Well, that's another thing, going back to open enrollment, right? So if we have these 3 abatement zones coming in, I mean, now we could even have potentially more people in our, I mean, not saying they're gonna have kids, but you know, if there's 3 zones of abatements, you don't know what you're gonna, what to
They're
expect.
commercial, they're not residential.
Right, they're commercial.
Right, but if somebody,
Yeah, they could live.
if somebody is driving to work that does, you know what I mean? If they're driving to Tipp City every day, they might wanna move here.
I guess everybody has a different level of understanding of what these abatements are. I thought they were just creating areas where companies could come in and build a business and then they would get an abatement.
Yeah.
So then there would be loss of, but some, you keep referring to farmland.
So just
That's what it is.
use your example. He said it perfectly. So if you'll just say it again, that's exactly.
So
what
right
he said.
now, there's 3 areas in Tipp City that were just turned into CRA areas,
8, 9, and 10.
8, 9, and 10. Right now, there's nothing sitting on there, and according to John Green at the city, right now, they're not anticipating anybody coming in anytime soon. These could be sitting here as CRA land for the next 5, 10 years before they can have a business say, you know what, I want to develop there, and right now I have a tax incentive. I can save 50% in property taxes, or whatever the amount is that is set up as. I can save 50%, build there, and for the next 15 years, I save half in my property taxes.
In property tax.
In property taxes. Now, we get more money on a now developed piece of property that has an expensive building on it, maybe more than, which would then be valued more than what it was when it was just farmland. Hopefully, the company stays here for longer than 15 years.
And then we get the full benefit.
Then we get the
at end of
full
abatement.
benefit.
But the city can also redo the abatement and give them another 15-year extension. So
I
that's
don't-
all it seems.
No, they
I
have
don't-
to come to the school district. before
I don't know if
do
we
that.
can do that,
Okay.
but if
We didn't, the one that they sent us last year,
Meyer, right?
they already had a footprint here, right? And
Yeah.
then they got an additional.
they were adding another building
Another
too.
building.
So they were adding an additional.
And that construction is still going on. That project is not completed.
It's
Right.
like
Okay.
$7 million or something. It's huge, isn't it?
I don't
It's
know.
huge.
It's
how
huge.
big
It was like
So-
3, yeah, it
So
was
if
a
it
lot.
had stayed farmland, maybe that farmer paid $10,000 in property tax.
Mhm.
And that's all that the district would, you know, we would get
Yeah.
that sent to us as the district. But now it's developed as commercial with this expensive business on it, it generates a lot more property tax. And so even if we only got 50% of that amount, it's still substantially more than the 10,000 that when it was underdeveloped farmland.
But they
So
could
do
always,
any-
at the end of 15 years, demolish the building and go away.
They could.
Do any people that, like those people that just built out in Rosewood Creek or Cedar Place, those people that used to be farmland
Yeah, Cedar Grove,
and they built a house,
right,
they don't get an abatement, right?
correct.
Because currently Tipp City does CRAs for commercial, not for residential, but other communities do.
But I
We're
think we
looking at
do have-
residential, they're looking at residential, I believe, Joellen.
They
I
might
could be
be,
wrong,
they
but I
might
think
be,
they
but
are
for now, those,
In the
there's actually, I
historic
thought there are
area.
4 of
in the
them.
historic area.
There's only, I think there's 4 CRAs right now. But I don't know that we have any, right now, this is like the land behind Taco Bell and the Road Dog. Okay, so if you looked at that area, I think that's one of the areas. It's just empty land. And so
Right.
city council will then use their zoning board and their economic development board, and they will use their long-term strategic plan for how they'll develop Tipp City. when a corporation comes to the school board and asks for an abatement beyond the 50%, that's where we have some say in it.
Right.
Otherwise, we don't really have much say in it.
Yeah,
Right.
They can do
So I
whatever
just-
they want. I'm just saying that I think that it's important as, just as a private citizen sitting here, understanding that we have companies that come in that don't pay the same amount in property tax as we ask every citizen to pay.
Correct.
When we need more money for a school, we go back to our citizens and ask them to pay more. Our businesses, they don't, I mean, they get a discount, heavy discount to start with. I understand that they bring employment. I just think that if we're so concerned about raising revenue through open enrollment, we should also be critical about asking companies that want to invest in Tipp to fully match and fully invest what our residents also invest in Tipp.
I don't think you can compete because
I
every city,
understand that it's a competition.
So,
no,
right?
every
It's not-
city has these.
But right,
Here's-
to
here's
Not
Corinne's
every
point,
city has
to
them.
Corinne's point, there's this little town in Northern Ohio called Van Buren. I grew up in that area. So everybody wanted to go to Van Buren School. Like whenever we had to go there for football games, basketball games, whatever, we always called it the rich school.
Mhm.
Because in Van Buren is this beautiful company called, guess what? Whirlpool. So, you know, who would put Whirlpool massive, I mean, like, kind of like us, right? With our Meyer and Abbott in Van Buren. I mean, it's like a one stoplight town. But they probably, and I'm assuming I was a third grader at the time, they probably said, hey, we'll give you a 50% tax abatement, but you need to build us a brand new school. Well, they did. I mean, they got a brand new bells and whistles. So it's an economic development issue, and that's the Tipp City Council side. But what you do is, hey, we'll give you abatement, and your hope is that that company says, you know what? Heck, we're going to build you a stadium. You gave us a multi-million-dollar 15-year tax abatement. I can pony up for a $3.5 million stadium. Let us do that. So I think in the scheme of what the long-term vision is, that you develop that relationship and you have like a Whirlpool come into a Van Buren and say, bam, here's your brand new school. I mean, that's just called being a good community member.
If we're talking about getting together with city council to discuss helping them further reduce what we're entitled to bring in commercial development, I'm in favor of that. I'm not, because I think that's good for us, because we're going to be better off financially.
Right.
And so that I'm good for. I just don't want to say, one, I don't think we have really much say in stopping anything. And then, so if we're talking about.
We're not talking about stopping stuff. Go
If we're
ahead.
talking about, because I'm not sure that's how I understood it was presented, but if we're talking about saying, hey, if you guys need help and you want to go beyond what you're allowed to do without our help, come to us. We're open to talk about it and talk about the financial projections. That makes sense to me. But my
Well-
understanding of what's going on right now, nobody's come to us with anything beyond the 50%, correct?
Correct. And we've been getting a lot of emails from, from the city on, these current 8, 9, and 10 CRA abatement zones. And so it's just always been, in a town this size, it's always been kind of, I'll just use the word disappointing to me, that the schools in the city don't work together. I mean, I think we've met with them since I've been here one time. And that was about the stadium, but it was well after the fact, way down the road. And, it took me a year to get that meeting, to make that happen. So I just want to, I'm just bringing it up to the board to say, is there any interest of, to meet with them, to try to build a relationship so they kind of, know how we feel. And if we want, we want the best for the city, the community members, our students, it all goes together. It all goes together.
I think that we need to explore that as a board first before, and a little
That's why I'm
further,
asking.
I understand that.
And that's not going to be now, we're way too busy.
I think that right now I think what would be helpful is potentially.
Joint meeting. City council and us.
I think, well, if it's an informational meeting, maybe, but I think right now, I think some members of our board might benefit from understanding more detail about how the CRA works and what that means financially, as far as tax dollars and when that comes into play and the difference between undeveloped land and developed land. And then after that, then once we have a discussion, once we're all educated and we have an understanding of how that works, then we can talk about our positions. Then if we think it's worthwhile to go further down the road, I would do that. But I think my suggestion would be is that before we get there, we have somebody present on how that works and provide examples.
Yes, John Green would be the person.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, so I just wanted to get feedback from the board, because we've been getting so much information from them. And I want to develop a relationship with them because I just feel like we don't have one. I mean, for crying out loud, they're across the street too. We're a small community. We need to all work together, right? So we have way too much on our plate right now. But because I have my annual meeting with them to discuss all this on Thursday, if the board is interested, when we have time, I'm thinking maybe like July or something, we have John Green come in and kind of explain this to him so that we, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
I don't want it to be adversarial. I want it to be hand in hand.
absolutely.
And we just haven't really had
Get
that.
educated,
Right.
better
Right.
educated on it.
So do we kind of have an agreement on that,
Yeah.
everybody, for like maybe July-ish?
Sounds great.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, item D, treasurer search discussion. So really, all we need to decide on, well, just to kind of bring us up to speed, but what we need to decide on is very simple. Are we using consultants or not? That's A. And then I'll just follow up on the last meeting, reach out to all the appropriate people. And I sent the information to Mr. Stefanik and Mr. Stevens. We were able to get the treasurer's position posted on Ohio School Board Association. I believe it was $250. I reached out to BASA and they do not do any kind of posting or anything like that. Montgomery County ESC, they don't do any type of posting or anything like that either. And then obviously K-12, we know that they consult, but they don't post.
Teresa, did you say that was Montgomery County ESC? And what was the other group that didn't do the post?
BASA,
No,
BASA, they don't.
They don't do a search. They did the post.
They did?
They did a posting, yeah, but they don't do search processes. Because I think Carrie said she was on BASA's site to put the search out there, or to put the posting out there.
I thought I said
It's on
that.
there right now.
I would have to look at my email. I thought that was a no.
No, you gave us a name and said this person was very helpful. But yeah, I think you were
Okay.
calling to see if they did search
I
assistance.
called so many people. I have like all yes, no columns.
Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, I'm glad that worked out. And I believe, wasn't that one no cost?
Right.
Okay, great. Well, that's good.
A couple of them were no cost, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank
So,
you for doing all that work, by the way.
oh yeah, no, it was fine. Everybody was super nice. I enjoyed talking to those people on the phone. It was really good. So we did get the treasurer's position posted in as many places as possible. And Mr. Stefanik, you were going to reach out to Miami County ESC. Was that also a no, just like Montgomery?
No, Miami County ESC
Posted it?
they've done search assistance. in
Oh,
the
right.
past. And so they've done search assistance in the past in Bethel and for Upper Valley CTC for treasurer's positions. And so they have a process set up. They already sent me first round and second round sample questions if we wanted to
Was there a price?
work with them.
Is there a charge for
Is there a
this?
charge?
Materials,
Okay, so like,
period.
yeah, handouts, like the little things that we did with,
Yeah,
okay.
any expenses, yeah.
Minimal cost.
Yeah, no overhead fee.
And do they post the position as well?
No, they didn't do anything.
Yeah, neither does Montgomery. I figured they're all pretty similar in what they provide, so, okay. So it looks like then we're looking at if we go the consultant route, it would be K-12, Miami County, ESC, and
Which
BASA.
one? Miami County ESC.
Miami
Sorry.
County, ESC, and BASA?
No, not
No, they don't.
BASA.
Yeah, just post.
OSBA maybe if you called them. Did you call OSBA?
Yes. Who did you call, Corinne?
I thought I was OSBA and they don't do searches.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't do searches, just postings.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? I thought,
I could
yeah.
have swore they were the ones.
No, not OSBA, I'm sorry, OASBA.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh,
Asma.
Asmo does
SBA.
posting. We got the posting
Yes,
there,
they do
right?
posting, they don't do searches.
So it should be OSBA, K-12, and Miami County ESC, I think are the three that provide assistance.
Consulting,
That's
yeah,
right.
right.
What were the costs associated with those?
Well, K-12 was 7,900.
Well, there's 3 levels, but
Yeah, that was the lowest.
yeah.
Yeah, that was the lowest, 7,900. And,
That's K-12 consultant?
yeah.
7,900?
mhm. And then, hang on, you know what? I didn't get a price from, I don't think Ohio School Board Association charges.
Oh, they do.
Why do I not have that email?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me check. Oh, hang on for a second. I have it right here. Go ahead. So anyway.
The budget church from K-12 was 6,900.
The what,
The
Simon?
bronze level.
The lowest?
The lowest was 6,900. The middle of the row is 7,900.
7,900.
Yeah.
Thank you for
And
that,
then what's
Simon.
the next, what's the
The
highest?
gold is 9,000.
Okay, yeah.
Hang on, let me find the Ohio School Board one. Here we go. Anyway, so just real quick, around the room, like a yes, no, you know, how do we feel about using a consultant?
How much does OSBA? We don't know how much OSBA
I'm trying to find the
costs.
email right now. So, I mean, it goes anywhere from 0 to 6,000, right? Because Miami, that's hard to say with the mask on. Miami County ESC is no charge, nominal, let's just say nominal charge materials.
Yes.
And then K-12, their low one is 6,900, Simon, or 6,000, did you say?
6,900.
6,900, 7,000. So, you know, work within that range, you know?
So we've posted, have we received any applications and what's our feel right now as far as response at this
Why can't
point?
I find that email?
I haven't received any.
It's only been a couple days,
I haven't
yes?
been to the sites yet.
This Friday.
You been on the sites yet?
Yeah, it's been 2 days.
I've seen one applicant.
One applicant so far.
How many applicants were there for Mr. Stevens' position that he has now?
For here at this district,
Right, do you-
I was not, I don't think anybody here was made aware of that, and I didn't look into it. Unless somebody else did.
and you found out about this job through OSBA?
OSB, somebody called
Here we
me.
go, sorry, just found it.
So they did what they're supposed to do. If you pay a search firm or not pay a search firm, if the ESC is a part of it, I mean, they look for people. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do, so.
I'm not sure I caught what you said, Mark. The ESC provides resources, like interview questions.
Well, they'll set up your process for you, so they
Oh,
will
they will?
consult. Yeah.
Okay, so they'll coordinate everything.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Just
I
misunderstood.
don't think they'll recruit though. I don't think that's part of the ESCs.
Oh, they don't recruit.
I don't believe they do.
All I told them was that we had the posting already out there. I said if they could assist us in, reviewing candidates' credentials and their applications. I said that might be something that would help us out. And then I said, and then structure the interview process. And so just as a sample, he sent me round 1, round 2 questions, that they've used in the past.
So real quick, I just checked my emails and Ohio School Board Association doesn't give us a cost. It just says OSPA's high quality search services are kept affordable as a service to our members. So let's just assume it's somewhere in the 0 to 6,000. They all stay pretty competitive. And I think theirs would probably be more, not a 0, but more on the lower end than a 6,000, just because it's a service they provide for
Yeah, I would
Ohio
assume
school
they would
boards.
be-
Yeah.
They would be cheaper than a private company.
Right. So my stance is, obviously we have no idea how many candidates we're going to get. I think it would be at our next board meeting that would have given the posting to be up, let's just, for rough numbers, say, 2 weeks, looking at my calendar, right? Almost 10 full days. So I think that would be a good time, maybe on the 22nd, if you could bring us the, or even put it in the Friday board update on the 19th, if we have 0 or if we have 25. At this point, I don't think we need a consultant. I think we should wait and see how many, applicants we get. And if it goes into the 3rd week and we have 0, we have a problem. So then at that point, it would be pretty easy to reconvene because we have a work session for April,
13th, I think.
Yeah, it's not that, 13th. We can do it before then. But I just, I think that we should just see how many applicants we get and kind of let that be our deciding factor on if we need a consultant. We have there are a lot of sample, treasurer questions. We're going to get the resumes, with the people in this room. I think we can sift through those and, see if we have qualified candidates. And, there are lots of sample, and we even have the one from Dave when he applied. And then we could also, very importantly, ask Dave, what additional questions, you've been doing this job for 6 years. What questions should we ask? We should go to Dave's staff of 3. It's going to be their boss. What qualities or what's important for, the treasurer, what's important for the interviewing committee or panel to ask. And those are the questions that we go with. Our form isn't going to look like the standard one that we, find online or the one that K-12 gave us, or, maybe kind of ESC. We learned that with K-12. This group did a lot of tweaking of what K-12 presented us. It just didn't match up. We wanted to go a little deeper, and that was just a little too much, broad stroke.
Right.
So we're going to change things anyway. That's just how this group thinks. So I'm saying no consultant, but
Did I understand you? I want
Yeah.
to make sure I understood what you're saying. So you're saying OSBA,
yes,
because we're already members, for some cost, which you are projecting is probably less than 7,000.
yeah, I know. It says very cost effective is what they say. Yeah.
Would you be able to get us, like, what are the services? Are they available, and what?
I forwarded you the email. I can resend it.
You mean you just sent it tonight?
No, I sent it last week. It
doesn't have any.
yeah, it's not very specific. It's just very,
Maybe some.
I guess I'm sort of supportive of that route too, but I feel like I need some information about what are we getting?
Yeah.
And are they available? They might not be available. This is a season that a lot of school districts are
I did
looking at.
ask her if they were available. I said, the board is talking about this. I have no idea how it's going to go. I couldn't even guess. And they are available. K-12 is also available. And I did not speak to Miami County. That would be Mr. Stefanik. But yeah, Ohio School Board Association and K-12 is available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say, I'm looking at OSBA's website. I'm not sure what K-12 does. Maybe they have some kind of service like this as well, but OSBA says they have a new leadership team workshop where they do a post-search team building workshop to help lay the foundation for new leadership team success. And that is included in the cost of the search. It's a $900 value. So, and then it says they have a guarantee. In the unlikely circumstance you are unable to make a clear decision, OSBA will reopen the search and do it all over again until you make the right choice. So.
Add another payment, or?
No.
As part of the initial?
Until you are happy with who you get.
Okay.
So.
And who said we have the option to hire an interim?
We always have an option to hire an
Yeah.
interim, always, yeah.
So I would support then Mrs. Dunaway's plan, wait until, what was
Like
that?
a 3-week mark.
Yeah, I'm not ready to hit the panic button.
Okay.
At this point, you spend money, I think. Let's see what happens.
Okay, so Joelle, just to be clear, I'm sorry. So are you for a consultant or not for?
At this moment, at this
Right.
time,
I'm okay with what you propose. It's fine.
waiting.
Okay,
It's fine.
like a 3-week mark? I'm not going to wait forever.
I'm fine with that kind of thing.
Okay. Corinne?
I don't know anything about hiring a treasurer. I don't know what attributes
Yeah,
to
right.
look for, honestly. And I found that the superintendent search, I'm not sure how we would have done it without the guidance of K-12. Do I think we need K-12 level service and expense? No. But I would like to look further into OSBA. It seems like they might be like a meet in the middle kind of solution
Okay,
to guide us and help us.
okay. I can reach
move
back out for
forward.
some more specifics.
Or, maybe Dave or Mr. Stefanik can.
I have her email, so I'll just email her.
Okay.
She was super nice on the phone, very friendly. All those OSBA people
Mhm.
are top
And
notch.
the thing that I like is what Dave just read, that if we don't find somebody that we like, they're gonna stick with us.
Okay, yeah, I'll reach out. Simon, what are your feelings at this?
I'm good with waiting a little bit and seeing how we get.
Okay, so for now, we're just gonna wait until the April board meeting and see if we have 0 candidates or, oh, one thing too is, Ohio School Board Association, she did tell me that the treasurer availability is very tight. And she said, don't be like panicked or alarmed. She said, if you have 8 applicants, that would be a lot. So, I mean, if we get 4 or 6, I mean, I think that's pretty good. Because she said 8 would be a lot. It's just a tight market right now, and it's just it's kind of like EMIS. We're feeling like our 2 really difficult positions at the same time. So
as
anyway, I will
currently,
follow up and I'll report back to you guys.
what we have in place is as we get applications, you're collecting them? And
Well,
then,
yeah, they stay in the online system, but yeah,
and
have
so
access to
then at our
those.
next board meeting, are we gonna start looking at those, or we're just?
Do you want to start giving us like on the Friday board update, just like how many we have? Would that be okay? You know what I'm saying? Just so we can kind of gauge.
yeah,
Because if
I think
we're gonna
someone
wait-
you can start looking at.
Because I think
Yeah.
also, if
Is
there's
that-
not
can
a
we do that
very
online
deep
like that?
pool, we need to start interviewing.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if you're allowed. That's why I guess we can.
I would suggest,
Oh,
just
yeah.
so that we remain objective, I suggest we don't look at any interview or any application
All at the same time.
until we have a process developed. What is the process going to be? And we all agree on what that process is.
That's true.
I don't think we
So
should
are we
be,
going to develop that process at the next board meeting?
Well, we need to get all the applications. We need to all be together when we look at them. And then there's like a criteria sheet. I mean, it's kind of like what we did with the it's going to look a lot like the superintendent search.
yes, but I think what Corinne was saying, and if I say this wrong, correct me, is that you need a point person that's sort of the coordinator and facilitator for all that. And
And when is this process gonna start?
yeah,
Because if there is a very shallow pool of applicants and we have 4 or 5 by the next board meeting, are we going to initiate our process? What does that look like?
I would like to suggest, rather than the next board meeting, about the next board work session that'll come. Oh, you're talking about this coming board?
Yeah, like it's in 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you said April.
I was hoping that at the next board meeting, we would
Oh, I did
have
say April.
something
Yeah.
on the agenda to vote on who we were going to work with. That to me would be an outcome I thought that would be reasonable at the next meeting. Because whether it's K-12, whether it's OSBA, I just feel like there's probably a need for someone to help guide this. It's a critical position. It's a process that somebody's gonna have to
We just
steer.
said we just said we weren't gonna do a consultant. We're gonna wait and see how many resumes we get and kind of let that guide us. Did I misunderstand that?
We could always wait to see how many applications we receive.
Right.
And then at the
The March 22nd board meeting, the application would have been posted for 10 business days.
Well, and then if we have, I mean, then when it comes to doing these things, we know that special meetings are routine.
Right, we have to have a special meeting. We all have to look at, like, to Joe Ellen's point, we have to all look at the resumes, one room, same time.
Same time.
Yeah, we all have to agree on, the top 3. And then we have to go in our questions, right?
So, but this is my point,
Yeah, go ahead.
is that on March 22nd,
Mhm.
let's say we have 4 or 5 applications.
Okay,
Are we at March 22nd going to do this process where we're going to have an executive session? We're going to look through stuff together and we're going to start reading out. Or at March 22nd, are we going to talk about hiring somebody? Or at March 22nd, are we just going to say, okay, we have 3 applications. Let's create our process that we're going to initiate at another meeting.
no, we don't have time to waste.
Right. So what are we going to do on March 22nd?
So I think it depends on when we usually set the agenda. We usually know ahead of time how big the agenda is going to be, right? Usually usually April and May are our biggest meetings. So March should be fairly light. Am I right? It typically is.
Okay.
So then, I mean, I don't know. I
haven't looked yet.
I always have a list on my phone for agenda meetings and board meetings, and I've got nothing, so that's a good sign. Because like tonight I wrote stuff down for like, May, whatever. I have nothing for March, so I think it should be a light meeting. So Corinne, to your point, hopefully we'll have we can talk about it that night in executive session, because we'll be talking about how many resumes, who, if we get 4 people who don't have a license, that's a problem, that kind of thing. So on the 22nd, we will have an executive session for this because it would have been posted for 10 days. And then if we say, okay, we only have 2 people
Yeah.
and neither are qualified, then we go to either Ohio School Board Association, Miami County, or K-12. Those are our options.
And that could be something that comes out and you vote after executive
Yes.
session
Right,
to
to look at a
reach out and
consultant.
go
Yeah.
into and.
Yeah, so in the
that way we're
meantime,
reaching out.
I will follow up with Ohio School Board Associations, Joellen, to get more specifics, not just like a general vague thing. I didn't do it because I didn't know how we were gonna vote. I didn't want to waste your time.
If they would even tell you, sort of like what that framework looks like.
Yeah.
Designate a point person to
Right.
receive the applicants.
Yep,
Before you open any application, agree what the, the basic qualifications are. And so
Correct.
you can, and who's gonna make sure somebody meets all those basic qualifications.
right.
We could also agree on what are the interview questions that we're gonna select,
Mhm.
who's the point person to contact each applicant, who's gonna follow up, what's the scoring for each of those?
Right, we have to have, everything has to be consistent. Every interviewee has to have the exact same questions. You can't ask this person one question and then not ask just basically the same way we did everything with the superintendent search. It's gonna look very similar.
I think we're gonna realize there were a lot of steps behind the scenes that I think K-12 did for us. As much as you think that we were involved, I think they did a lot of things behind the scenes to
But-
organize the process for us.
So when Mr. Stevens interviewed,
Well, Liz did a lot of that behind the scenes.
so that was
Yeah,
more
she
handled
did a lot.
internally by our people here in the,
Liz was the point person.
When I interviewed,
yes.
Oh,
when you-
sorry.
When you interviewed.
that I don't know. I
No,
sat
we
in that
didn't.
room.
You didn't interview with anyone?
Well, no, I only interviewed with the board. I mean, I just was,
None of us were here then, so.
yeah, nobody was here. It was 5 other board members.
But you didn't like talk on the phone with like K-12 rep or another,
It was OSBA and all they did was state that we think we have a school district that would
Okay.
give you, we'd like to, are you interested in applying?
and they gave you a time
Yeah,
to come
they
and.
said, please fill out your application. And then I was contacted later after the board had reviewed my application and they selected me as one of the applicants they wanted to interview.
Okay.
Sure. And so are we gonna have a second interview? Who's
Oh,
involved in
always,
that?
yeah, we always have to have a
Who
second interview.
coordinates all the,
I think Joanne's point's well taken. Whether we get a rep or not,
Mhm.
we need to establish what the process is gonna be so that we can uniformly apply it. So.
Yeah.
I would, before we take time to develop that process, I would suggest we wait to see how many applications we get. If we get a great number of applications and we think we've got enough to start with, then I think the first thing we do is kind of talk about in a work session, what the process is gonna be.
Yes, I agree.
If we don't have a great
You
group
said
of,
that, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what we
I-
said.
We can use the
You're in
K,
a-
you can use the
to the-
K-12 framework. It's pretty,
Yeah.
same.
to the extent we don't have a great group of applicants,
Then we have, we
then we're gonna be
have to shift.
probably following somebody else's
Yep.
procedure. So at this point, I'm good with waiting to see how many applicants and then revisit it at the next meeting.
Right, but to answer your question, Corinne, at the next board meeting on March 22nd, we will have executive session to see how many applicants we have, to see hopefully if they're qualified, and then we'll go from there. Yeah,
Sounds good. Thank you.
and yeah, I'll probably end up being the point person on this just because when you're the president, everything falls on your plate, but I do this, this is not scary to me
What do
at
you
all,
want
so
done?
I've
Teresa?
done
I'll
this
do it.
before.
Tell me what you want done.
No,
Take it off your plate. Tell me.
No, at the next, we're gonna decide the next meeting. We'll just-
Okay.
We have to do,
I'll take
we
it.
have to have a criterion sheet, we have to have
Yeah.
interview questions, we have to, somebody has to reach out, Dave has to reach out to his staff and say, we have to get the questions, and then we all have to agree on them.
Okay.
And that has to be an open session, like a work session. So we'll have to have a special meeting, because we can't just meet every 2 weeks, because we have to do this now. So we're gonna have some special meetings that we're gonna have to schedule, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything on the treasurer search discussion? Okay, so that concludes the general section of the meeting. So now we're going to move on to section 4, which is executive session. And at this time, we are going to adjourn to executive session for purposes authorized under Board of Education Policy 1211.22G3, conferences with an attorney or the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending imminent court action. Is that correct, Dave? It's
Yes.
still the same? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm looking for a motion in a second.
I will motion.
In a second,
I'll second.
moved and seconded by Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Heatherly. And
We will have an
Who are
attorney,
we inviting in?
oh gosh,
It's a different,
Tess, her name, I totally forgot Tess's last name. She's going to shoot me.
okay, well, we'll wait a minute because I have to invite them
Yeah,
in.
give me one moment.
Take your time.
Attorney.
Is Mr. Stefanik going to be in there?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Is there gonna be any action?
No,
I'm getting ready to say that now. It's just a text thing.
Tess Tannehill.
Okay, so the board would like to invite Mr. Stefanik and Tess Tannehill into the executive session, and and Dave Stevens, and we do not anticipate any action.
Okay,
So do you want to take a quick 5-minute
Yes.
break?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
we have to vote.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Motion in a second. So,
Dahl and Heatherly.
yep, Dallin Heatherly.
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Stand up.
Oh my God, oh, motion carries. It feels so good to stand. I can't
We are back.
It is 8:44. Oh, am I good, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 8:44. We're back in regular session. And we're going to move on to item 5A, which is potential special meeting date. So Mr. Stefanik, if legal counsel and you decide that we do need to meet about the TCEA bargaining, will you just reach out to us so we can, I don't know if we're going to need it or not, so.
Well, we had a preliminary discussion and it was whether or not the board wanted to meet between this meeting and the next.
Do we need to?
regular meeting.
I don't think there's anything going on right now.
No, there's.
Yeah, I don't think we do
right now.
either. Okay, so we don't need that potential special meeting date. So the next regular Board of Education meeting will take place on Monday, March 22nd, 2021, at the Board of Education office beginning at 6 p.m. The next work session meeting will take place on Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, at the Board of Education office beginning at 5 p.m. So right now, I just need a motion and a second to adjourn.
I motion.
I second.
Motion and seconded by Mrs. Dowell and Mrs. Zakor. Dave, we're ready for a vote.
Dahl?
It's
Mr.
the court.
Core was first.
Oh,
It's not that, it doesn't
Zakor.
even matter for you.
Yep, all right. Zakor?
Yes.
Dahl?
Yes.
Dunaway?
Yes.
Heatherly?
Yes,
Patrick?
Yes.
meeting adjourned.